I want to welcome you to the Retro Rogues Live. Please pay attention to our warning graphic. It states that the Retro Rogues Live show is intended for an adult audience and not intended for children under the age of 13. Parental discretion is advised. My name is Dave Beatty. I'm one of your hosts. For nearly the last 30 years, I've been a professional illustrator and graphic designer. I've worked on a lot of things that some people have heard of, such things as Batman Incorporated, Justice League of America, and Flashpoint Wonder Woman, to name just a few. Although my current labor of love is Kirby Tees. Kirby Tees is my t-shirt company where we make all kinds of fun things. You can learn more about that. You can see some of the things that we have for sale, as well as possibly purchase a Retro Rogues Live t-shirt and help support what we are doing here on Retro Rogues as well. You can see all that, learn more about that, and whatever over there at kirbytees.com. I want to welcome back my co-host. This is Mr. Eric Alexander. Eric, please tell the folks hopefully watching or listening at home some of the fun things that you have worked on as a creative professional.
Yes, hello everyone. I am Eric Alexander, also known as Base God 14. That's Base God 14, not Bass God 14. I still get Bass God all the time, and no matter how many times I say it, but it is Base God 14, like a bass guitar, because I used to play bass guitar, hence the name. And I am the co-host, obviously, of this show. I am also the associate producer of a feature film called Occupants, which features Star Trek Voyager actor Robert Picardo. That's currently streaming for free on Tubi. That film was directed by a good friend of both of ours, actually, Russ Emanuel, who Dave has recently done a film with called Routine. Right, Dave? That was a film that you did with Russ. And I am currently involved with a project with Russ that I hope to be able to talk about very soon. We're going to be filming in November. And I'm hoping I get to talk a lot about that as that starts to get closer, because we have some name actors involved. It's going to be a lot of fun to talk about.
Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. That's very exciting news. And I think the cat's kind of out of the bag that we have, between us, something going on as well. There's been images and different things that have kind of been leaked, but hopefully we'll be able to share more about that very soon too, because it's still a little too early to talk about that. But there's props being made, there's costumes being made, there's something really fun coming that I think people will be excited about. So, absolutely. And thank you for helping make that a reality through Bad Bob Productions. It's very cool. So
absolutely, that's what we're here for. Oh, and we got somebody in the house, Dave. I think you know Frank. You may have remembered him from Arizona HP.
Yeah,
AZ Gaming HP, because obviously Frank was a big person in the convention scene at the Phoenix Comic-Con. I know you usually were there as a guest. You usually had a booth and stuff like that. But for years and years, Frank used to run the video gaming booth, and it's good to see you guys putting in that work. Thanks, Frank.
Oh, thanks, Frank.
I noticed that you've been doing a lot of streaming on Twitch lately, and I've been wanting to check it out. I've been having some problems with my Twitch account, but Frank, I did notice that you're doing some stuff, and definitely would be nice to get some cross promotion stuff going on, because Frank knows way more about gaming, way more about Twitch than I could ever hope to know. So, but Frank, thanks a lot for tuning in and saying hi. I really appreciate that. It's nice to see some folks from those old days when it was Phoenix Comic-Con. I don't know what's it called now, Phoenix Fan Fusion or whatever it is, but back in the day,
Yeah, some people would say back in the good old days.
I would say that. I would actually say that. I'd be one of those people.
I would say that too.
Another person that we kind of know, we've talked about it before. Cara Nicole, cosplayer, very well established cosplayer. She did a tweet today or yesterday where she was asking, like, what convention do you miss the most? And I wanted to say, I miss all of them the way they used to be, not the way they are now. Right. The one that I do miss, the one that I support every year is Game On Expo, and I still like that event. I don't think you've attended it, Dave. Actually, we were talking about.
We talked about going. Yeah, we talked about doing it together one year for sure. So
because they were one of the last conventions to decide to cancel. And I'm sure that was because of the Phoenix Convention Center basically saying they couldn't do it. But they ended up doing a drive-in event that I took my girls to that was actually quite a bit of fun. In fact, the actor who plays Kreese was in a film that they showed in a drive-in format at Westworld in Scottsdale. And
that's very cool.
It's Cove, right? Martin Cove? Is that
Martin Cove?
Kreese? Yeah. He was in it. And it was filmed in Arizona. It was bizarre. It was really cool.
Very cool. Very cool. I've always wanted, and I know that most of the Karate Kid, like the principals, I think they're all guests at the Phoenix Comic Con at one point. I forget exactly when.
I think there was a year where the three of them were there. I think it was Dove, Machio, and Zaba were all there one year. It was like the Karate Kid year.
Yeah.
And that was before Cobra Kai.
Yeah, way before. And I wanted to go over there and meet them, and I think that was one of the years I was super busy and I couldn't get over there. But yeah.
I don't think I made it that year either. I don't think I was even there, which is a shame. Gosh, what I know about Zaba now, I really wish I could talk to him.
Yeah.
I've said it before. I really want to say, man, you got a raw deal. You totally should have been like an action hero during the 80s and early 90s. And there was someone on the Rogues gallery last week that suggested he really should have a role in the MCU. And I think that's good.
The suggestion was Wonder Man, which I thought would, depending upon how they do it, could be really kind of cool, because Wonder Man was at one time like a Hollywood star, you know what I mean? And then, turned superhero kind of, well, he was a superhero, the Hollywood star, then back to being a superhero again.
That sounds perfect.
Yeah.
See, I don't know anything about Wonder Man. I don't know anything about that character at all. But yeah, it was a suggestion from somebody that was watching last week. And I thought I think he could play a lot of different roles, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I just feel like he can sell martial arts really well.
I personally think, the more I've thought about that since that came up the last episode, that I think he'd be really great actually as the sort of more Time Lord version of Booster Gold, where he's been, kind of monitoring the time stream and kind of pop in and, be Booster Gold, maybe for that Flashpoint movie or something, it would be kind of fun. So we'll get into that, because my pop culture tonight is going to be a little bit unusual. So
there's a lot of cool Flashpoint rumors out there that I've heard about. So that'll be fun to talk about later, because there's a lot of cool rumors going on about Flashpoint.
For sure. And then Frank actually says, yeah, Dave and I know each other. I still have my Bushy Tales comics and trading cards autographed. And he says, laugh out loud. That's awesome. It's funny. I actually relocated what remains of the Bushy Tales comic books actually into the studio, trying to find a spot for them. There is not much left. I have 3 cases. 2 of them are partials. Number 2's been sold out for years and years and years. And I have a little bit of number 1. I have a little bit of number 3. And I'm planning to try and do something with this case of number 1s I have left, but I'm still debating. Yeah. Thanks, Frank. Thanks for the Bushy Tales shout out. Bushy Tales is still very much a labor of love. I'd still love to do something with Bushy Tales in the future. Just not exactly sure what. And then I had planned to hopefully do something actually with the Retro Rogues fanzine, the magazine that we had been doing, and I'm running way behind on getting the next issue out. We started some pre-production. I'd been talking to some people, and between running Kirby Tees, the show here, and everything else I have going on, it's been difficult to get things back on track. But hopefully we'll be starting that up very soon.
Yeah. And Jane's in the house. She says hi.
Hi, Mom.
And Frank does mention, yep, quote, back in the good old days for sure.
Yeah.
And Jane mentions that Dave, she has a case of Bushy Tales issue 2 and 3.
Oh. There you go. Well, I know that my mom had mentioned that before, and I've been trying to get that case of number 2 from her, but it just hasn't worked out so far. But we'll probably make that happen at some point. But talking about the good old days, we have some kind of top of the show business to cover here real quick, but then I actually have something else I wanted to show off and talk about just briefly that is kind of related to that. Okay, so this last weekend, we had promoted it here on the show that it was going to be happening. We did the 24-hour comic book challenge, and we were doing this also as a charity fundraiser event for one of the members of NASCA, which is the Northern Arizona Cartoonist Association. D, as I know him, Daishan, has Well, he explained it on the show better than I could, but basically he had essentially a brain tumor, and he had it removed. It started off, they thought that he had lung cancer, and it turned out that he had a myriad of things, and then this particular form of cancer is rapid growing and spreading, and it eventually was on his brain, and actually had to remove it. So he's got medical bills that are like, I can't begin to describe the situation with his medical bills. They're incredibly high. Our hope was that we would raise a bunch of money, and we were trying to do it kind of as a slight kind of Kickstarter kind of thing too. So the hope was that people could just donate to the GoFundMe. Thank you, Eric, for putting the GoFundMe up. The GoFundMe is up right now. Obviously, you can click on the link, go over there, and obviously, if you want, please, contribute. Let's try and help Dee out. It's pretty. These bills are just crazy. So the GoFundMe link is up. You can check that out, and hopefully, if you feel so moved, please think about contributing. But our hope is that we could offer kind of reward tiers, like a Kickstarter kind of thing. So the hope was, while you watch us create this 24-hour comic book, which became Battle Burrows, which you see the cover for right now, the hope is that you could go in like a Kickstarter. So if you wanted to donate, but you wanted kind of to get a little something for your donation, then if you donated, you could get a sketch, you could donate, and you could get a comic book, you could get a limited edition Battle Burrows t-shirt, all these different things. At the end of the day, we raised, a little bit, not much. I think we moved the needle by between the GoFundMe and actually the different items that were available at Kirby Tees. We moved the needle by a couple $100, but it wasn't much. I was hoping we could do more, but sometimes these things don't work out. I tried everything I could to get people hopefully engaged and we did live stream that 24 hours. We had to break it up into 4 segments. Segment 2 got banned. Thank you, Universal NBC. We appreciate your support. Basically, chapter 2, segment 2, basically you can't watch. It got blocked. But there's still another 2 or 3 that you can watch. You can see them on the YouTube. You can see them on the Facebook page. But we did live stream the majority of the 24 hours, except for about 2 or 3 hours between the hours of 2:30, 3:30, 4:30, somewhere in there, and about 5, 6 o'clock. We did end the live stream for just a little bit. If you watch the live stream, you'll see why. I don't have to tell you why. You can just go see it for yourself if you're that curious about it. But for those people who don't know, there is this thing called the 24-hour comic book day challenge. Okay. During the 24-hour comic book day challenge, basically the goal is to create an entire 24-page comic book in 24 hours. This is the 3rd year that NASCA, the Northern Arizona Cartoonists Association, has done this challenge. I have participated in it. I have personally participated in it 3 years in a row. This year, my contribution was a little different because of what's going on with COVID and social distancing and whatever. We weren't able to do this the way that we normally did. We had a partial crew here, actually at Dave Beatty Studios, actually here in my house, as well as in the studio, which also is, I guess, Retro Rogues Live North. I don't know what you'd call this. But anyhow, I did have a partial crew here, but then we also had several NASCA members who actually worked remotely. So the artists and the writers who actually worked on it, you can see here, they're credited here on the cover. Al Sparrow, Art Gecko, Josh Dubois, the Janimal, Alec Kozak, Danny Roberts, and then obviously myself. We all contributed to this book. Everyone did different things. Al actually wrote the story. He had actually written the story prior to this event. This actually was a joke that came out of year 2, because we basically did year 2 in an open air construction site with no heating, no cooling. They were concerned about wandering burrows coming in at one point. So that's where the joke of the battle burrows came from, because everyone was loopy and someone started talking about, I wonder if the burrows are going to come wandering in while we're trying to work. And someone made a joke about something else. And before you know it, I forget who it was, someone had done a go battle burrows spoofing off of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Everyone had a good laugh about it. And then Al jokingly said, I'm going to write a book about that one day. And he did. And this is Battle Burrows. This is the book that came from that joke. It started that night. So basically the way it worked was the story was already written. People were basically assigned random pages. Everyone just jumped in, and basically we created an entire 24-page comic in 24 hours. This is probably the biggest crew that we've ever had. We've done this with a lot less. Year one, I think there was only 3 or 4 of us. That was a really rough year, though. Normally, D, who this was also hopefully a fundraiser for, normally he actually participates. He was the writer of the first year. He wrote the first story, which was Last Train from Clarkdale. And then he contributed on the story for the second one, which was actually Lost Boys of Clarkdale, because normally this is done in Clarkdale, Arizona as a part of their Clarktoberfest event. We do this in anticipation as a ramp up for the event, and then we take money and pledges and stuff that actually benefit the library there. And then when the event actually happens, we set up a booth and we actually sell the comic book there, which is normally like the next weekend. We have the comic book on site that people watch us create. So I've been rambling for a long time. I'm sure you have some questions, Eric. I kind of roughly described to you before, we were going to do when I was talking about using the Retro Rogues channel live stream, for the event. You said you did get a chance to watch some of it, correct?
Yeah, I kept peering in periodically throughout the entire weekend during the event. And I thought it was really interesting because, obviously the people it's the Northern Arizona Cartoonists Association, correct? That's what it stands for?
Yes,
The
yes.
Northern Arizona Cartoonists Association. You guys have a lot of different talent there. You have a lot of different people that are into different things, different personalities. It's kind of interesting to hear you guys talk. And of course, I know Al probably the best of any of the folks associated in the project besides you. It's interesting to see what he talks about, because it's not like I know Al that well, but it's interesting to see what he's all into. I actually tuned in when you guys were talking about lettering, and I actually watched almost that entire segment because I was just checking in. Because like I said, I periodically was checking in, making sure the stream was going okay, making sure I could see it on my phone. I think I texted you a couple times saying, hey, there's an issue here right now. Like, I can't see this, so you need to do this, and I just started listening to what you guys were talking about. And I was like, it's actually a really neat discussion, and I thought it was really cool. And, anybody who wants to check out any of that broadcast, I think it's still available on all the platforms. I think it's still there on Facebook, still there on the Twitch, it's still there on the Twitter, it's still there on the YouTube even, which of course we had a YouTube snag, because YouTube always has to be that guy. They always have to be that one to be upset about something, because somebody was upset about something. Which was what was it? Captain America got us in trouble, I think, because you talked about Captain America, the old movie.
Right. So what happened is during the midst of this, in order to make sure that we didn't have dead air, I had decided to rebroadcast every single episode of In the Studio Retro Retrospective, which actually inspired Retro Rogues. Right. I thought it'd be interesting too, because D was actually in several episodes. As obviously the Janimal was the host, the original host, actually, because it was weird, because I considered him the host of the show and I considered myself the co-host. So he pretty much ran things, and I just kind of bounced off of him. It was sort of the straight man and acted as a producer and a director. And so I thought it'd be fun for people to see those, because I know a lot of the Retro Rogues Live community, maybe they haven't seen those, because again, I pulled the Facebook, the YouTube page down in a fit of rage one day, which I've talked about on the show previously, for this very exact reason, right? This exact reason. This is why I pulled the show down, because in the middle of the night, when no one's paying any attention, they yank things down and they go, oh, hey, look, this thing violates XYZ, blah, 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 whatever. Who freaking cares, right?
Sure.
Anyhow, so yeah, it was the Captain America, the Red Brown. It was actually I think it was the first one, actually. I think it was the original Captain America with Red Brown from 1978, 1979, which is actually a fun episode. That's the one that actually got it blocked. I think we still broadcast it, though. That's the funny thing. I think it still went out live, so if you were watching, you probably saw it. But I think most of the In the Studio episodes were in that segment. So all the In the Studio episodes basically got blocked and pulled down again by YouTube because they blocked the main one where I had them running. That's funny, right? Ha ha. Again, thank you, Universal NBC, for your support. We greatly appreciate it.
That's why we do a stream on Retro Rogues.
Right.
We're on Twitch and Twitter, and we're committed to doing that because we keep getting problems with YouTube all the time.
Yeah,
they are not kind to us. So it's just the way it is, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But we do have some supporters out there, like Bobby Chambers. He said,
"Hi, Bobby.
It's good to see you, Bobby. It's always a pleasure to have you, out there commenting on the show. And I hope you're going to like some of the stuff we're talking about today. But we did mention off the air, Dave, eventually Battle Burrows will be available on KirbyTees.com, correct?
Well, it was available during the event, and it will be available eventually later too. The idea was to create some kind of scarcity for it. So, this kind of particular version of it is specific just to this event. So that version's basically been pulled down, and then the one that will go up later, that's kind of the one that I'll probably have in print. I'll have like at shows and stuff like that. But the T-shirt and this were limited specifically just to this event. So if you pledged during the event, then you were able to get a comic and a T-shirt that directly reflects this 24-hour challenge that we did. The one that may come later, Al may tinker with the dialogue a little bit. I may have a version of the shirt available. I don't know. I'm still thinking about it because I am designing one just for the NASCA members. It's going to be like a army green kind of looking, and I'm going to put chevrons on the sleeve because we did 3 years. So we're going to have 3 chevrons with the NASCA logo. Like if it was Army, they have the crossed rifles, but instead it'll be the NASCA logo, which it looks like an ink quill. That'll be where the crossed, rifles would go, and we'll have 3 chevrons representing, 3 years. So
that's cool.
Yeah. And along those lines, I have a couple things I wanted to show. I want to show a couple pages real quick. My 2 favorite pages from the book, they're both by Alec Kozak because I thought he drew the most hilarious looking donkeys I've ever seen in my life. There's another page. I couldn't find it, though, that I wanted to share that I thought had me in tears when I saw it. But something kind of related that's retro, right? Totally retro. I wanted to show off. The Janimal brought me something actually before we started the live stream event. He's always bringing me fun things that he finds. So he actually brought me this. So I hope everyone can see it. This is actually funny. This is not the one I owned, but this was the first Star Trek phaser I ever remember owning as a kid. This was a projector. So when you would fire it, it would actually shoot light out, and it has a sensor here where it could register things, almost kind of like laser tag before laser tag, right? But yeah, this was, and I forget what this did. There's a little red button up here that does something, but it's in this style, obviously, of the Star Trek phaser. But you can see it's kind of like a weird, kind of size, right? But I thought this was kind of fun. But yeah, the Janimal brought me this. But this is super vintage. This is from I think
Jelly is what I am. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm familiar with that toy, and that's not an easy toy to find these days.
Yeah, but this is from 78, 79, I think. And the Janimal brought me this and said, "Hey, I thought you'd like to have this to add to your phasers." So this now sits with my phaser collection.
Does it work?
I know. I was trying to figure out where to put the batteries to see if I could get it to work, and I couldn't get it to work. The trigger still depresses, and it's in really good shape. And I have a feeling that if I tinkered with it enough, I might be able to get it to work. But as it currently sits, it does not work. But this is Amigo. Mego Toys product. And oh, my bad. This is even older than I thought. This is copyright Paramount Pictures Corporation 1975.
Wow.
This is even older than I thought it was. So this is actually from 75. But I remember having this as a kid and loving this. And I think I broke mine. I forget what I was doing with it. I'm sure I was running around playing Star Trek with it. And I must have dropped it and broke it, I think. But it's pretty cool.
I think that's the issue is most kids broke them. That's why they're really hard to find these days. And it looks like, even though it's non-functional, it looks like it's in really good condition.
Yeah, it's in really good shape. It's funny because it reminds me of the kind of thing that you would see the artist who did the Gold Key Star Trek comic books I've talked about before. It looks like something he would draw like as a phaser, kind of getting some of it right, but it being slightly out of proportion or something. So it makes you think.
Out of proportion because it was functional. It actually had a different function. It wasn't just to be a screen accurate prop. It actually did something. That's why. But
it's kind of cool because it actually has the little nodule right here that sticks out. I don't know if you can see that, but it's pretty cool. Like I hadn't seen one in such a long time. But this is really cool. But this actually now sits in a place of honor with my other phasers because I have obviously I have an original series phaser. I have a motion picture or Wrath of Khan style phaser, Star Trek 6 Next Gen. I've got a whole bunch of Star Trek props, a whole bunch of communicators too, because I'm a big Star Trek nerd, as I know Eric is too. at least vintage classic.
I am a Trekkie. I don't say Trekker. I don't say Star Trek nerd. I don't say nerd. I say I am a Trekkie.
There you go. So no offense intended. So.
No, I'm old school. So I'm a Trekkie.
So I thought I would show just a couple pages here real quick. I'm going to put them up on my other screen over here. These are just in Photoshop. But this is one of the big splash pages that Alec Kozak drew that had me absolutely in stitches.
This great.
This is the battle burrows. It's funny because the original intention was I think they were going to be more Power Rangers-esque, but then Danny Rock.
You know what hits me when I see that is Teenage Mutant Turtles. I feel like they could have competed with the Turtles back in their heyday.
Right. But it's funny because Danny Roberts, one of the artists who contributes and does this every year, Danny always has a unique perspective that he brings to things. And it was funny because I think it was like around 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. I forget exactly when it was, but he asked me while everyone was working on pages, he's like, hey, I was thinking about Sergeant Rock. And I was like, Sergeant Rock? He's like, yeah, I was thinking about Sergeant Rock. And so I ran over and I grabbed, because again, I was facilitating tech guy. I went over and I grabbed my Fire tablet because I have all of the Who's Who, the DC Who's Who. I bought all of them, so I have all of them digitally on my tablet. So I ran over and grabbed my tablet because we were talking about. He's like, I'm trying to remember like all the different characters that were part of Sergeant Rock's crew. I was like, oh yeah. So I pulled that up and we were looking at it and kind of reminiscing about Sergeant Rock. And then before I knew it, the Battle Burrows had a Sergeant Rock theme because Danny drew one of the establishing shots of them. So then they ended up being kind of like World War II era kind of characters. But I thought this one was really funny. And then I just loved Alec's version of these burrows. I mean, look at these expressions on these burrows. Absolutely hysterical.
That is funny.
So these are two of my favorite pages because I just thought his burrows looked absolutely hysterical. But like I said, you'll be able to get a copy of Battle Burrows on the Kirby Tees website again very soon. So, and then all the NASCA members, if they do shows, on their websites or whatever, you'll be able to get copies from them as well. So, but I thought I'd just show a couple pages here real quick. But yeah, this was a fun event. It's and it's interesting too because the art styles on this are very radically different depending upon who worked on the various pages. Like this is a page that the Janimal did, but you can see like his style is so different. He's got. But yeah, that's the thing that makes it really kind of fun and interesting too, is the different approaches everyone takes.
Very cool. I think that's probably what makes that kind of project so unique. Doing a 24-hour comic book challenge, you have all these different creators, different artists, so you get to see all these different styles in the same book with the same story, all
Yeah,
telling the same story, but very different art styles.
right.
People might not understand that, and that's, of course, that's why it would be like that. It's because there are multiple people literally taking a page or two or three or whatever it is, and then somebody else gets handed the torch like a marathon and
Right.
has to do the next page.
And then Al, the writer, actually lettered it, and I was the one who was lobbying for that, because normally what ends up happening is whoever draws it sometimes just letters it while they're working on it. But I wanted Al to actually letter it, since we were working remotely and everyone had because normally we don't have access to this much equipment. I mean, I'm dead serious, man. Last year we literally did this in a live construction zone, an open air construction zone. There was a picture on actually Facebook. Let me see if I can get that picture, because I actually shared it. It was funny. It's like, hey, a couple years ago you were doing this. It's like, why, yes, I was. Yeah, let me get this picture over here real quick so you all can see this. So this is from last year, but you can see there's no windows here. Yeah, it's framing. It was a remodel. It was nuts. But yeah, and so like there's usually no computers. There's hardly any technology. It's real old school. Like it's pencils, it's ink, it's paper, and we do it all live on site. Now this is from last year. This is D here. Here's Al Sparrow. Here is the Janimal. This is Danny Roberts. Obviously that's me. And this last year, Ricky Killingsworth actually worked with us, and he actually has a company. He does self-publishes comics called Random Molecule Comics, but they're very Jack Kirby superhero, cosmic. They're really fun stuff. But yeah, this is the crew from last year. But no, yeah, it's a fun event, and we always do it up and have a good time. But yeah, this is year 3. Basically, 3 years in a row we've managed to do this. So this is probably for me. This year was probably the closest to being the most comfortable I've ever been doing this, because I have a spare bedroom, so there's like an actual real bed. So if someone needed to crash, they had that. There's a nice couch. There's there's air conditioning. There's electricity, like regular light. Because that's the funny thing. You can't really see it in this picture because they had actually taken them down. You can see one in the back there. But that's one of the construction. We were drawing this with construction lights and generators running the whole time. Like it was nuts. We had to use actually a restroom down the street. Like, oh no, I take that back. There was an unfinished restroom in the back we were using. This is rough, man. This is the roughest year. And then the year before that, it was the territory's first bank that was currently being remodeled, that had been like a winery at one time. And we slept I've talked about how disturbed I still am about having slept in the bank vault. That really bothered me. I'm still emotionally disturbed. It was unnerving when they closed that door and I was in there trying to lay down. I still haven't gotten over that. So, but yeah, this is year 3. This was easily the most comfortable I think we've been. But we finished with an hour and a half to go this year. So it was fun. It was fun.
Oh, that's cool. That's very cool. It's always good to come in a little bit early.
Yeah, yeah.
I've done film challenges in the past, and I've been on ones where we didn't get the film in on time.
Oh, wow.
Because I could totally see that coming, and no one would listen to me.
Yeah, yeah. I think our first year was the when I was most concerned, because we were figuring everything out. Like by now, year 3, we kind of know roughly what we're doing, and everyone's learned to kind of let go of certain things, because the first year everyone was trying to control it, I think, too much and make it a particular thing. And then eventually you realize you just have to let the wheels fall off, or the wheels are going to fall off, and just let it be whatever it's going to be. Because you can't, when you're trying to move that fast, you can't be too controlling about it. You have to just let it go, right? And that's what I've learned to love, is the minutia of what comes out of letting go, and letting the energy of the moment drive whatever it is you're creating. And then the book is interesting too, because like I said, this came out of a joke, because literally they were concerned about burros and wild animals and javelina wandering in while we were trying to work in the middle of the night. Like, it was an actual real concern. So it was just so strange having to be worried about that, right? Like, or having that thought. That's
your
like
normal kind of concern, right? So
right. And so this is fun, because this kind of came out of a joke from the idea that, burros are going to come wandering in, because someone was like, well, maybe they'll be here to help us. Maybe they'll be, I think someone joked about the Mighty Morphin battle burros or something. And before you know it, there's a song. And the song is actually in this comic book, by the way. The lyrics to the song are in this book.
Oh, really? Okay.
Are you familiar with Hee Haw at all?
I am. And actually, I remember you guys, I remember Al explaining the background of the book, because I came in pretty early to make sure the stream was actually working. And I could see it on my phone. I wanted to make sure I could watch it on my phone. And he was explaining a little bit of the background, and he was talking about some of the Hee Haw references and stuff. I grew up on that. And incidentally, there's one of those sub-channels. There's so many of these sub-channels out there now that I think people don't even know about. But there's one that does Hee Haw. They do reruns of Hee Haw, and periodically I'll just be channel surfing and I'll see a clip from it, So
yeah, it's but that's the thing, that these battle burrows are a part of Operation Hee Haw. So
yeah.
I don't know. This thing is so silly, and I told Eric, I still haven't had a chance to read it yet. I've been so busy, and I got the book set up. It's been pre-pressed. It's ready. Hopefully, we'll be printing it here in the next couple of days. And I've been so busy on that end of it, getting it ready. I still haven't had actually a chance to sit down and read it yet. But just some of these pages absolutely had me in stitches when they were coming in. Well, anyhow, we'll leave some of that mystery for hopefully people to buy a copy of the book and explore it and learn about it that way. So
there you go.
Yeah, very cool. So like I said, I apologize. I didn't want to take up too much time with that, but we did want to discuss Battle Burrows, since it was a Retro Rogues, live, sponsored sort of like live event. We wanted to talk about it, and obviously want to encourage people, to take a look at the GoFundMe, see if there's maybe something you could do. Even a couple bucks, anything will help, So, but yeah, very cool. And thanks again for your support, letting us use the live stream and do all this insanity, because we were basically on your Twitter, doing all this insanity. So I kept wondering if someone was going to come in and be like, Eric, question mark? Like it's going to get a weird comment. Like, what's going on? But so.
No, I think it worked out okay in that regard, at least on the technical side of things.
Yeah.
Anyway, if any of you see that link, please take a look at it. If you can't contribute, always remember, just share it. Just share it with other people. You can always do that. Obviously, every single one of you has something, whether it's a Facebook, a Twitch, a Twitter, or YouTube, because you're watching us on one of those. So just make sure that you share the link out to people, even if you can't contribute.
Greatly appreciated. Very cool. All right, so I think that's it for top of the news kind of stuff. Do we want to go ahead and get into Cobra Kai?
Sounds good to me.
All right, cool. Apologies. Wow, look at that. I've got that old school graphic up now. Apologies kind of in advance, we're going to probably run through season 2 kind of quick so we can get to speculation. Eric and I had already discussed that. We thought it'd be fun to try and get to speculation kind of quick tonight. So we're just going to run through them really fast. So we're going to start off with, let's see here.
Take a right.
Yeah, take a right. So read the summary here real quick. It says that Daniel's students are given a lesson in overcoming their grudges. Johnny spends some time away from the dojo while Kreese exerts his influence. But the big thing from this one, not getting too well, I guess it's kind of spoiler. The big one in this one is the return of the original Cobra Kai. Basically, a lot of the original actors come back, they reprise their roles, and we get to see the original Cobra Kai reunited. That's for me. Talk about impressions of this first episode. That's the big thing for me in this episode, is seeing all the original Cobra Kai back together. They play the song. They're on motorcycles. It's really kind of fun. And then we get like a fun action scene with all of them together too. So tell me, Eric, what were your thoughts about this first episode here, the second half of season 2?
Well, as I said last week, I can't review Cobra Kai without, having my Coors Banquet out here. And of course, I got to step up my game. So I also got myself a little Slim Jim, because I got to make sure that I'm doing Cobra Kai the way it's supposed to be done. Because Cobra Kai will never die. That's for sure. And this episode, that's what it's all about. It's all about Cobra Kai. It's about the original members of Cobra Kai. And what's really funny for me is that being a big fan of Karate Kid, being a big fan of just everything Karate Kid, really, you know what I mean? Even Karate Kid 3 has some redeeming qualities to me. I mean, I love this franchise, but the Cobra Kai thing is really just, it's so cool to me now. Just like even cooler than I thought it was as a kid, because as a kid, all I cared about was Daniel. I didn't care about Cobra Kai. I thought they were evil. And so as an adult, to kind of see them in this very different light and kind of be rooting for Johnny, because I am Team Cobra Kai. I'm just saying it right now. I mean, obviously I am Team Cobra Kai, and I'm really enjoying it. And seeing all these guys together, what's funny is I didn't even realize who a lot of these guys were, or what they were doing, or what they've been up to for the last few years. One thing I am aware of, being a big fan, was that most of these guys, especially on the Cobra Kai side, they're still good friends in real life. They like hang out together, like Cove and Zaba, they're good friends. You know what I mean? Like all the Cobra Kai people apparently really bonded on set, and they're all still friends. And I'm not really sure Macho is really part of that, to be honest. He is to some extent, but I think to a lot of it, he's still kind of on his own. He's still by himself. And the Cobra Kai guys are really tight. And you really see that in this episode. And, I was so into it, and I was enjoying it so much. And here's another thing. One thing that's interesting is Zaba is like the youngest of the group, because Zaba is like 54. And most of these guys are pushing 60. They're like 58, 59, like they're all older than he is. Even Machio is older than Zaba is, which is really crazy to think about, because people will say, Machio looks like he's 12 in Karate Kid, but he's actually older than Zaba. He's older than Elizabeth Shue. And most of the Cobra Kai guys are also like significantly older than Zaba. They're like 4 or 5 years older than he is. And you kind of really see that in this episode, because Zaba kind of still looks like Johnny, in the movie. And you're kind of sitting there with the Cobra Kai's like, right, who is that again? Which one was that guy? Because they're like all bald now. They look a lot older, but it was still a lot of fun. And what I did was I kind of went down a rabbit hole trying to figure out who these guys were. And I was kind of like, have they done anything else? And I was really surprised at some of the results. Like Tony O'Dell, who I'd say is kind of like the pretty boy of the group besides Johnny. Like he's the one that's kind of stood up the best physically, I would say. I didn't realize he was in Head of the Class. I didn't even know he was in Karate Kid. I used to watch Head of the Class. I've even seen reruns of Head of the Class within the last year. Never made that connection that was the same guy that's in Cobra Kai. And I was just like totally fascinated by that. And then the other thing is like if you notice in that scene, only one of the other Cobra Kais does some real martial arts and actually looks like he knows what he's doing. The other two, including Odell, Odell looks, I think he actually like just breaks, like he doesn't do anything. Like he almost looks like he has no idea what he's doing. I don't think he knows martial arts at all other than Hollywood martial arts. And then, of course, the other actor was sick. He was sick in real life. So he was very limited in what he could do. But Ron Thomas. So I found this link, and I don't know if you knew about this. Did you realize that Ron Thomas is like a motivational speaker and a martial arts instructor?
No.
And he was the one guy that threw an actual like real karate move. That's because he's a real karate guy. He actually does he's actually won championships. He took it really, really serious. And I found his website, and he's like a motivational speaker now. And he does this hashtag called No Mercy Mondays, where he does all this stuff on Instagram. It's really cool. It's really interesting. And I totally noticed because I watched it for a second time because I love this episode. And I totally noticed he was the one guy who was doing like real martial arts in that fight scene, which I thought came out really, really well in the bar fight scene. And it's because he actually still fights. He still trains. And it's really interesting. And like they have some pictures here from his Instagram. You can see one over here, which is really neat that he actually talks about. Like this is a picture that it's taking a little bit to load. But this picture here in the center, he's talking about how like they did that before Cobra Kai because they hung out anyway. They're all friends. You know what I mean? And it's really neat to see that, you know, that these guys actually made like a real relationship out of Cobra Kai, this evil organization, you know what I mean, on the original Karate Kid movies. And he's a motivational speaker now. He really is kind of like his character, like his character in the show, he's a preacher now. And he really is kind of like that guy. He's a motivational speaker, and he's like a life coach kind of guy. So I found that fascinating. And again, I just want to point out that he was the one guy besides Johnny, besides Zaba, that was really doing like what looked like real martial arts on the screen. You know what I mean? That was really He does this fantastic front kick. You know what I mean? That he just does really, really well in that bar fight scene. I was like, yeah, I guess he's still training. It's like, so I looked him up. It's like, oh yeah, he's still training. You know what I mean? Like he's really into it. Like he actually like embraced it. He's not just a Hollywood actor guy, you know, that's faking it and calling it in, you know? And then I would be remiss. I mean, it's a little sad to say, but of course I did go down this rabbit hole, and I wanted to find out, you know, how this came together, all that kind of stuff, learn a little bit more about the actors. And we have to talk about Rob Harrison, who played Tommy. And of course, yes, this is a big spoiler alert, but Tommy does not make it past this episode. The actor died within a year of filming this episode. And I didn't know if did you know that, Dave?
I did.
He was really sick.
He was genuinely not doing too terribly well. And it was I found it made it even harder to watch, to be honest, because, you know, realizing that because it's powerful and it has an impact, but when you realize he's really gone, you know what I mean? And it happened so close to when they finished filming this episode. It was tough. It was tough. Yeah, and see, that's the thing. It's like I love seeing all of them back together. Like it was, and it was fun to see. But
this image I have up, doesn't this image almost give you chills? Because that's when they won the fight. The Cobra Kais are back together, and they win this massive bar fight and have that moment together. You know? Yeah.
It's really cool. I really, really liked this episode a lot. I really did. And it was so, and it was so, and that was the thing that was so fun, because again, it's one of those things. It's like normally you don't normally have that moment where you kind of get to root for the bad guy, sort of, you know, and you realize they're not really the bad guys. So all the kind of fun and cool things I thought was cool when I was a kid, like I liked them on the dirt bikes with the music, and they had the matching jackets, and like there's all this fun stuff they did in Karate Kid that you want to be like, yeah, that's cool. But at the same point, you realize they're the bad guys, so you can't think that's cool, right? But the thing that was fun about this is it is cool that, you know, that they're our heroes now, so we get to root for them. So they're playing the music, and they're kind of, you know, showing us, you know, the scenes from the original Karate Kid of them riding together, and we see them riding together, you know, sort of like today, you know, in the modern era. Essentially, it's a lot of fun, and it was so much. And that was the thing. I was surprised they didn't call this episode just like The Ride, you know? because I felt like that was probably a better, because that's what you are. You're along for the ride with these guys. Just like whether you like it or not, you're also along for the ride with Kreese when Kreese decides to start taking things in his own particular direction.
Yeah.
So,
and we should touch on that too, because that is relevant going forward. This episode is very special within itself. Like, you could literally just watch this episode, particularly if you're a fan of the first film, you'll get something out of this, seeing all these guys together and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of the narrative going forward, Kreese is really starting to show his true colors in this episode, and what's really going on, and Kreese's master plan.
Right, for sure. And let's, if we're good with this one, let's go ahead and move on to the next one.
I do want to provide a teaser for our speculation. Okay. There is a Cobra Kai missing. A very important Cobra Kai is missing in this episode. So that will be important later for speculation. Because there is a Cobra Kai that's missing. A very prominent one. And anybody who liked Karate Kid, Dutch ain't here. So there'll be plenty of speculation later when we get to that.
And it's interesting, too, because Dutch he had the Billy Idol kind of look. A lot of people are looking to Hawk as if Hawk is sort of like the new Dutch. So it is interesting. Yeah, it is interesting.
A lot of ways. Yeah.
Yeah, that he was kind of absent, from this particular episode. And that's the thing.
And they do allude in this episode. They mention Dutch is in prison. So Dutch is the one guy that didn't reform at all. That's what I got from that. He's the one guy that possibly wouldn't have any problem with what Kreese is doing.
Right. Right.
And that intrigues me.
Yeah. We'll get into the speculation. Let's get through these so we can get to the speculation. So the next episode was called Lull, and says to prepare his students, Daniel gives some new training methods a shot. Says Miguel puts a new lesson into practice, while Johnny makes a tough but pivotal decision that affects Cobra Kai. Which I think the big decision that happens here, this is the episode where basically Johnny says this isn't working and basically wants Kreese to leave. I think that's probably the big moment from that particular episode, which is Lull. The new kind of training method is, I don't know if the new training method is that terribly pivotal. As far as because that's the thing. I sometimes feel like is why I love watching all the stuff that's happening with Miyagi-Do. There are some times where I feel like Miyagi-Do is just kind of marking time, and all the really important big moves is actually happening with Cobra Kai.
Well, this show is not called Miyagi-Do.
I know, but I'm just saying. I always feel like that sometimes we're just kind of marking time. But I'd say for me, the really big moment, the important thing that happens here is where Johnny makes that decision, and he feels like that, that basically Kreese needs to go, because there's this really fun moment too where he and Kreese are actually training together, and they're actually kind of going through the moves, and you see them actually connecting a little bit, and that's really powerful and kind of fun to see. That Kreese is the snake that you have to keep an eye on, but it's still kind of fun to see them kind of working and training together, even though it's not going to last. So, what was your big takeaway from this episode?
Well, I thought the Cobra Kai thing was kind of interesting. To me, it's very much reminds me of playing Capture the Flag. Did you ever play Capture the Flag growing up, Dave? You were scouting. I'm sure in scouting you guys played Capture the Flag.
Yeah,
I was in Civil Air Patrol, and in Civil Air Patrol we used to do field training exercises, because Civil Air Patrol actually has a real function of actually, as volunteers, we're supposed to look for downed aircraft. So even as a cadet, we used to train for this. We used to do field training exercises, and in the evening, when we were done playing with the transponders and, trying to find them, because that's what we did, we would, they would place the transponder somewhere and we would have to find it using the detection equipment. And, evenings we would play Capture the Flag, you know what I mean? Like a lot. and people got pretty physical in some of that stuff. And in Civil Air Patrol, you had guys that were, as young as like 14 and guys that were basically like 18, and there's a big gap in those years, especially as people develop at different stages and all that kind of stuff. And it used to get kind of rough. Not as rough as they did in Cobra Kai, but it used to get kind of rough.
Right.
It reminded me of that. It reminded me of those days of playing Capture the Flag and things like that. And it was kind of an interesting moment. I don't know how I feel about is it Stingray? Is that what he calls himself? The
Stingray.
The old new Cobra Kai. I know he's there for comedic relief, and I know he does have funny moments. But I thought it was kind of lame that he won. You know what I mean? I was just like, what?
Right.
Come on, that's dumb.
Right.
To me, the whole thing with Hawk and Miguel fighting each other that's the big narrative. That was cool because at that point, Hawk is still really, to me, he's a real badass. You know what I mean? And he's becoming kind of evil, but he really still likes Miguel. And there's a really close friendship between Hawk and Miguel. And you kind of wonder, is Hawk going so overboard? He's going to go after Miguel now for dominance of Cobra Kai. So there was kind of a tease there. You know what I mean? As far as is there something now that's going to happen between these two guys? And, it doesn't turn out that way, but they kind of teased that. And I thought that was kind of neat.
And it's interesting too, because of my own personal experience, I kind of went through something in my martial arts journey that I actually felt like we kind of get a little bit more of it coming up. It's not, it kind of builds, but before there's sort of like a little bit of a break in their friendship. But I had a really close friend that we were training together in the dojo, and it does get to this point where, and I still don't understand how this happens, but it did get to this point where there was sort of like this weird rivalry between the two of us, and it did eventually cause us to kind of come at loggerheads. And we've never really been friends ever since then. Ever since that moment, we've just never been tight, And there was a point at which I was trying to reconnect, and it just wasn't happening because it's just like it's still there. That sort of whatever you want to call it, that moment, that bad blood, that whatever, it's still there. And it's never the same, because I had sort of. Just like with Cobra Kai here, I had this tight group. There was and there was four of us. There was literally there was four of us, and we were really tight. We did all the competitions and all the different things together. We were very much the senior students. We were a very tight unit. But lo and behold, there a little bit of a rivalry started here and there, and different things broke apart. And I haven't talked to many of those guys in years and years. I don't know. That was one of the things I thought about reflecting, especially these last 5 episodes, seeing them reunited here. It did make me think and reflect upon that a little bit as we're working through the episodes. Why did that go wrong, and why did things turn out the way that they did? Which puts even more fuel to the fire for some of the speculation that you're going to have with what you think might be coming up actually with season 3. So
yeah, absolutely. No, but it was a little bit of it's a spoiler. I mean, we're getting into spoilers, obviously. It's a little bit of a red herring, but I did think that they kind of teased us in a good way there. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, they kind of played with it a little bit, but that's not where it goes. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, for sure. So if that's good, let's go ahead and move on to the next one, because I said we were going to try and get through them pretty quick. Episode 8, Glory of Love, obviously named after the song. It says Daniel works to make amends with Amanda, which is his wife, while Johnny is introduced to the world of dating apps, which has some interesting effect. It says then complications arise when Miguel, Samantha, Robbie, and Tori cross paths. Now, this is an interesting episode because we spend a lot more time with Daniel, I think, in this episode than we'd had so far. And specifically, his wife is not happy with the amount of time that he's been spending. And we've seen this. We've seen this throughout, season 1 into season 2. Obviously, season 2 is more of a problem than season 1. But she feels like that he's kind of neglecting his sort of like family responsibilities. and it's obviously causing problems. And so Daniel is actually trying to repair some of the damage that he's done. He tries to get these special meals. He starts showing up to work. He tries to have the Miyagi-Do students come out and they're training while cleaning the cars. Like he's trying to show like, I'm present in this relationship. I'm here, but she is at times kind of not having it even then. Even when they do kind of make up, it still feels like that she's not thrilled, and I don't think that he's repaired as much of the damage as he might think he has. I'm trying to think. I guess for me, I think the big takeaway for me really, and it's in context of the last episode of season 2, but there's like it's like a roller skating rink thing. They're doing like an 80s night, and for me, what's happening, the soap opera-ish love triangle problem stuff that happens at the skating rink, and the emergence where Tori and Samantha clearly are not going to be good with each other. I think for me, that's the big takeaway from this episode. What about you, Eric?
I think, in terms of narrative, you hit the nail on the head, because that's what becomes much more relevant, and that's really where the season goes. That's where the season ends up, is showing this love triangle between Sam, Tori, and Miguel, really. And Robbie's kind of there. You and I aren't big Robbie fans. Robbie's there, but it's really about Miguel, Tori, and Sam. But for me, again, being the Cobra Kai guy I am and the old school guy I am, I really got a kick out of the Johnny actually joining us all in the age of smartphones and dating apps and all that kind of stuff, because I've lived that life. Okay. I am single, you know what I mean? So to some extent, I still dabble in that kind of stuff, but it never goes well. It never goes well. And you guess what? Johnny didn't miss a thing with that crap. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't go well. It's a bunch of crap. You know what I mean? What I love about that episode is Johnny talks about how he used to get girls, and you would literally purposely bump into a girl at the bar and get her to talk to you. And that's what happens in reverse, is some girl bumps into him and she's totally into him, totally, eating out of the palm of his hand after all these dating apps go completely wrong, to the point that he actually meets that bitch from the first episode, the one that made him lose his job, because that wench is out there trying to get a guy too. Oh, she's single? Oh, who would have seen that coming? You know what I mean? But but I love it how he kind of goes full circle, but then he has this sort of epiphany because he sees Miguel's, I don't know if he would even say that's her boyfriend. She sees the guy that's hooking up with Miguel's mom.
Right.
And he's a douchebag. And Johnny steps up and basically don't ever talk to her again or I'm going to kill you. You know what I mean? Just straight up. He just straight up, because he realizes he really likes Miguel's mom. Which is because remember, this version of Johnny is a little bit of a racist and stuff too, but he likes Miguel's mom. You know what I mean? So I thought that was really interesting. Again, I'm all about Johnny, all about Cobra Kai, and I really liked seeing Johnny's journey with all that. And it was fun seeing him playing with the smartphone, and he's thinking, hey, I'm getting up to speed, and it's just a disaster with the dating apps. And there's so many of us that can relate to that have been single, that have dealt with that kind of crap. Yeah, you're not missing anything. Do it the old school way. That's way better.
Well, and it's funny too, because there's a lot of fun comedic moments too. There's where Miguel is the one who's actually trying to help him get set up, and he's asked, "What are your interests?" And he's like, "I don't know." And he has Iron Eagle as one of his interests. His actual listed interest is Iron Eagle. So
and also,
Iron Eagle keeps coming up.
I forgot to mention that, but that's the Iron Eagle thing. One of the Cobra Kais was in Iron Eagle, and it's not Java. It's one of the other Cobra Kais was in. I don't know if you knew that, but one of them was actually in Iron Eagles.
I didn't realize that. It's been a long time since I've seen Iron Eagle. I wonder if we should do a retrospective
on Iron Eagle.
A Rogues retrospective on Iron Eagle now.
That would be fun to do as it gets closer to Top Gun Maverick to compare.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah. So yeah. So if we're good with that, let's go ahead and move on to the next episode. That'd be episode 9, which is called Popo. Says the summary says Johnny cautiously takes a stab at love, while Daniel and Amanda enjoy a romantic date night. An attempt to bring the students of the two dojos together backfires as hostilities between the teens escalate. So I'm going to be honest with you. I rewatched this episode, but I'm not exactly sure what they mean by trying to bring them together.
The party.
But
that's
yeah.
That's Hawk's girlfriend. She literally tries to. Hey, she invites both sides to her party.
That's right. Yeah, I remember the party, but I didn't specifically think of it as her trying to bring everyone together. But yeah, the party.
We're all friends. You know what I mean? Like she wants to be the good one. She's Hawk's girlfriend, and she was Amanda's rich friend. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like she's trying to like bring all the sides together. She's trying to be that peacemaker.
Well, I think her name is Moon. Isn't her character's name does she go by Moon? I think it is because he's got the tattoo of the moon on his chest. I think
the tattoo, the infamous tattoo.
I remember Hawk. The party. It's so weird.
Character. Hawk is just such
Yeah.
Poor Hawk.
Right. So yeah, I think I'm going to be honest that this is that episode where we have this interesting sort of like, just like with season 1, where we see that Johnny and Daniel, in a weird way, they in a different alternate reality, they'd be friends probably, right? Because they're kind of like, it's not exactly a double date kind of situation. Well, it kind of is actually, but
it wasn't intended that way.
It was
that way.
But it's interesting because you see the two of them that if they could find a way to get past everything, that maybe they could be friends, right? That there could be a kinship there, and that because of the past rivalries, the bad blood, whatever. And it's interesting because one of the things that kind of keeps them, I think, from really clicking, more so than the bad blood of the past sometimes, is what's happening with their students. It's almost like their students are almost like a block. Like they're part of the reason that these two guys are never going to be able to get along, because directly, indirectly, their students also cannot get along. And for me, that's going to be the big takeaway from this episode, is the big drinking contest that happens at the party, again, between Tori and Samantha. I'm going to keep harping on the Samantha-Tori thing because I have a theory for season 3 that I already talked about last episode, but I'm going to get back into that again. But there's the drinking contest between the two of them. Tori loses the drinking contest, and it just further enrages her. But the big thing that happens is, in the midst of all the insanity before the cops show up and break up the party, Miguel and Samantha kiss, and Tori witnesses this. And this is what's going to fuel what happens in the last episode, which is absolutely off the hook, crazy, insane, and fun. I don't want to see kids do this for real, but in this episode, this next episode, it was a lot of fun. But that's going to be my big takeaway, is the drinking contest and the kiss, and where we're headed into the next episode. What about you, Eric?
Well, I'm kind of in the same place you are, but for different reasons, because I think it's setting up a huge tragedy. I don't see it as a lot of fun. I do think the students are starting to kind of take on a life of their own that even goes beyond what's going on with Daniel and Johnny, because I think you're right. I think to some extent, the students are kind of making this worse. And of course, the fundamental problem between Daniel and Johnny is each one of them is very bad at seeing the other person's perspective. And we can see that in life. And I kind of wonder if the writers actually put that in there as a little bit of reflection of society, because, hey, we're in an election year, and I can just tell you, people cannot see the other person's point of view. They cannot see the other person's perspective right now. We're very much like that as a country. And Daniel and Johnny are like that. And that's their biggest problem, is they just can't put themselves in the other person's shoes and kind of see the other person's perspective. They make assumptions. They jump from place to place. And honestly, what's interesting is, as Johnny, I think, continues to grow, mature, and become a very sympathetic character, and in my opinion, the hero of the story. It is called Cobra Kai, so I feel this is Johnny's story, not Daniel's story. Daniel's kind of going more and more down the tubes, and becoming more and more less responsible, more vindictive, more vengeful, all that kind of stuff. And there's a little lull in this episode with the two of them, fueled by the girlfriends, by the wife and the girlfriend. The girls are kind of trying to get the men to behave like men and not like little boys, which is what girls are supposed to do, by the way. That's a very feminine quality. You don't see that in cinema anymore because it's like, oh, well, they should be off kicking ass or something. But you get that too in this one. But they're showing some very feminine qualities there, that the women are trying to make peace. They're trying to get the guys to realize, hey, there's a reason why I like this guy. You know what I mean? So maybe you might like this guy too. You know what I mean? And they're trying to bridge that gap. Meanwhile, things are going crazy with the students. The students are escalating things like crazy. Of course, Dimitri has to take it a step further. You know what I mean? And granted, I'm saying the Hawk didn't make it worse too. I mean, he pours the drink on him or whatever, and everything like that. But then what Dimitri does to humiliate Hawk, using all that information that he knows, because that was used to be his only friend. Dimitri had no other friends besides Hawk. And in the beginning of this season, Hawk was still carrying Dimitri. There are scenes literally where Hawk is introducing Dimitri to girls and stuff like that. Dimitri's using the Cobra Kai name to get girls, become more popular when he's not even part of Cobra Kai. And I don't like him. I don't like Dimitri at all. I really don't. I just do not like that character. I've known too many people like that in my life that are exactly like that kid. I did not like them then. I don't like them now. They just make the situation worse. They're condescending. I don't like it. I like Hawk. I like Hawk a lot better. I'm upset about we talked about it last week. I'm upset that he took Miyagi's Medal of Honor. That is kind of almost like unforgivable. I will admit that. But I like Hawk as a character way more than I like Dimitri. And he escalates things. And then, of course, on the other side of that, Sam escalates things. Because Sam decides, oh, I'm going to get in a drinking contest with this girl, when supposedly Sam's not even a drinker. That's very much like alluded to, that she's not even a drinker. So I don't know how she won that contest. That's kind of silly. But she wins the contest drinking. She gets herself plastered, you know what I mean, at this party. And then she kisses the guy she really wants to be with, which is Miguel. Because Miguel was always the one she wanted to be with. She just ended up with Robbie because he was there all the time and lived at her house. That's my theory. So anyway, there's a lot going on with the students. So we have this opportunity for Daniel and Johnny to really kind of, maybe make amends, start going in the right direction. And the students are just fueling this incredible fire during this episode that's going to lead to tragic results.
Yeah, and that was kind of, I remember when I first, because I watched all these episodes as soon as I realized they were based on Netflix prior to us deciding to do Cobra Kai. I remember just kind of watching this one and going, wow, where are they taking this? Because you can clearly tell, just as, the last season, the sort of like the big fight was definitely Miguel versus Robbie. And I was wondering if season 2 is going to be a rematch. And I wondered, are these events leading to that? But no, the big battle in season 2, the big fight, this episode made me realize when first time I watched it, I'm like going, wow, okay, so the big fight this season, it's going to be Samantha versus Tori. That's our big fight. That's where we're headed, right? With, like you said, completely tragic circumstances. I'm going to explain why I said it was fun in just a moment, because I did not enjoy the tragic moment in the next episode. But if we're good, are we good to go to the next episode? Then we can get into speculation afterwards?
No mercy, man. No mercy.
All right, well, there you go. Yeah. The next episode is called No Mercy.
Summation of the episode, Kreese was right. No mercy, man. No mercy. That's bullshit.
Yeah, that's true. We're going to get there. So let me read the summary, and then we'll just talk about our big takeaways. So it's the first day of school at West Valley High, but tensions between the two dojos have not cooled with the end of summer, and the rivalry between Daniel and Johnny comes to a head. Okay, so there's a lot of big things that happen in these last couple of episodes, and specifically a lot of important things that happen in this episode. We get a rematch between Johnny and Daniel, where it looks like they might actually finally settle it this time. Basically, Daniel is trying to figure out where Samantha is. And he basically uses, he's tracking the cell phone, and he realizes that she is at Johnny's for some reason, and he doesn't understand why. He decides to force his way in. He finds Robbie there. But prior to that, Johnny is trying. It's interesting because of the previous episode, Johnny is still trying to be cool with Daniel. He's like, look, they're kids. Just let them cool this off. You're going to make this worse. Like, he's actually trying to tell Daniel, look, don't worry about it. It's your kid. I'm not going to let anything happen. Right. Like he actually wants Daniel to kind of trust him. Right. Which of course Daniel doesn't, because Daniel is just, this episode, I think in some ways, especially this fight, I think epitomizes sometimes what I think is wrong with Daniel. Should he be concerned about his daughter? Yes. Should he want to get his daughter out of there? Yes. But at the same point, too, the way he goes about it, totally wrong. He kicks the door open, knocks Johnny around, and Johnny's like, okay, all right, if this is how you want to do it, we'll do it this way. And they get into this fight. It's looking like it's going to be super epic until the kids come out and the fight kind of ends. But for half a second there, it looks like we're finally going to settle it big time. This it's on, right? And that's a really fun fight. I really enjoy that fight. That's kind of what I'm talking about. There's a lot of fun fights in this episode. It's fun, right? It's dramatic. At the same time, there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of story happening in this fight too. We get like some callbacks to the original movie. Like it's fun, but it's fun too, right? But the big takeaway from this episode, for me, there's two big takeaways. The first one, spoiler alert, Miguel does decide to quote unquote be the bigger person and to show mercy to a fallen opponent. And he does that with Robbie. And Robbie takes advantage of that moment. I don't think he means to do this necessarily.
It's called a cheap shot, and he absolutely meant to do it. That's what it's called. It's called a cheap shot.
Yeah, he takes advantage of the moment. And because of that, Miguel gets knocked over some railing after one of the. Well, we're going to talk about the brawl in just a minute, but he gets knocked over the railing, and then he falls, and it looks like he. I'm not really sure if they're implying. Well, they do imply that he's broke something in his back because they talk about that he may not be able to walk again. But it's a very huge, tragic moment. I was in shock. I was angry about it, because Miguel is one of my favorite characters, maybe my favorite character, in all honesty, in all of Cobra Kai. I have really been enjoying Miguel's journey. I was devastated when that happened to him because he did not deserve what happened. Miguel, a lot of times, is a victim to all the minutia of things going on around him. He's in the wrong place at the wrong time, often, but he's usually a victim of the minutia of what's happening around him. He doesn't really do anything to escalate it, but he is a victim of it. So that's one of the big takeaway moments. But the big one for me, in all honesty, is what's going on between Tori and Samantha. Tori shows up at the school. They're like Aisha's trying to get in touch with her. There's little talks about that where Miguel's trying to get in touch with Tori, and Tori is ignoring basically everyone. They don't know where she is. They don't know what's going on. She turns up at the school, and at one of the most dramatic lines in this episode, she says, "I'm coming for you, you bitch." And it's on, man. Now, it starts one of the most crazy brawls. And I, as a martial arts action fan, I just had a lot of fun with this. Now, watching kids beat each other up, especially the two younger kids, that was sort of hard. Like, I was like, going, no, you shouldn't be doing this. But that being said, I had a lot of fun with the brawl. Stingray gets in there. He's trying to get a job as security guard. He has some little fun comedic moments. He even high-fives Hawk at one time, which I thought was hysterical. I laughed out loud at that because he's supposed to be breaking up the fight, but clearly he has a bias, and you can tell he is exercising his bias, even though he's quote-unquote breaking up the fight. There's a point where a teacher is like, "Oh, forget this," and just walks off. That's what I'm saying. There's a lot of fun and funny things that happen in this fight, but it does have very huge tragic outcome and huge dramatic consequences, because I feel like, depending upon what happens in season 3, that this might be the thing that prevents Daniel and Johnny from maybe ever finding a commonality, because we always had those episodes, season 1, season 2, there's a commonality here, you guys could be friends. They keep showing us that you could be friends if you choose to be. You could be. And, this is the one where I'm like going, I don't know. I don't know if the writers intend for these two guys to find. I mean, I think we'll have another episode where it turns out they have more in common than not. But my big takeaway is the battle between Tori and Samantha, and unfortunately the tragedy that befalls Miguel. I mean, it's almost Shakespearean. I mean, I know it's martial arts and it's not Shakespeare, but that moment almost kind of reminds me of Shakespeare. It's that end of Romeo and Juliet. It's that horribly crazy, like, turn that you don't expect that leaves people broken, and they're never probably going to be the same after. So those are my two big takeaways. What about you, Eric?
Well, it's a crazy episode. We talked about this last week, as I was reviewing the ratings on IMDb, and it's, looking at the ratings, none of these episodes have anything, I think, below an 8.4. I think that's the lowest rating they get. So they're all highly rated episodes for season 2. But the last episode is 9.5. And it's above all the other episodes. Now, that's not my favorite episode. My favorite episode was episode 6. I still have the picture up. My favorite moment was seeing the old Cobra Kai together, the bar fight, because I can relate to that. That's where I am at right now. I would love to get my old crew together and do something like that. I mean, that would be awesome. The whole 9 yards, taking the motorcycle trip, going out there, getting into a fight, winning, then hanging out and talking. You know what I mean? That would be like awesome. That's just the way I am. But in terms of popularity, this episode is the one that everybody's talking about. This is the one that everybody likes. And it's because of the amazing choreography, the fight choreography. They really did a good job in terms of, if you're into this show because you're into action and you like action stuff, this is what you were waiting for all season. The big confrontation between Cobra Kai and Miyagi-Do. So it's a big moment. I actually watched a YouTube thing where a bunch of the younger actors were talking about the entire fight sequence and doing shot by shot breakdowns of the fight sequence. And what was really interesting for me as someone who's into film and into film production was they were talking about the locker scene, and that was all done in one continuous shot. And in order to do that, because apparently, sorry to bust people's bubble, most of these actors are not real martial artists and only know Hollywood karate and are not stunt people. They had to actually incorporate the stunt people into that scene as they were doing it continuously. And they were talking about how they literally would hide in the crowd. The main actor would hide in the crowd. The stunt person would take over, you know what I mean? And then they would have to come back in for the close-up. I was like, wow, that must have been so much fun to plot that and figure out how you're going to do that and where the camera is going to be, so you don't see the main actor when the stunt double's coming in. Because they said they did it all in one continuous shot, which that just made me feel like, as far as production value, wow, you guys really stepped up your game. That's really cool, But ultimately, as far as the narrative is concerned and everything, I'm a Cobra Kai guy, and I felt bad that Cobra Kai got their ass kicked, and I don't understand that. I don't think it makes sense. Cobra Kai is the more aggressive of the two. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. They've been training longer than a lot of the Cobra Kai people have. It just doesn't make sense to me that they lost the fight, and I hated that. I just felt like, you could say that Miguel won his fight, but not really, because he didn't show no mercy. He should have shown no mercy. He should have taken Robbie out, won the fight, cleaned his clock, and at least he would have won. You know what I mean? So that's my takeaway.
But they do the stuff that happens with Samantha is important, because we know that Samantha has trained since she was a little girl. Like, that's part of her backstory. So even though we don't start the season off with her currently training, she probably has had as much, if not more, training than Tori. So I wasn't too
Well, we don't know
surprised that she was
because we
able.
talked about that last episode that we don't know what Tori. We know Tori came in there with a background in martial arts. That's
Right,
we don't know what
but
that background is. We don't know where it comes from, who taught her, how long she was studying. But remember, she's actually able to take Miguel the first time she walks into Cobra Kai. Now, granted, Miguel is kind of fighting with one of his hands tied behind his back because he's like, she's a girl, it's her first day, and he's not a jerk. You know what I mean? But he
well,
does. But he does
if
get
you
his
watch,
clock clean by Tori in that when she first walks into Cobra Kai.
well, that's what I'm saying. It's like I didn't find the fact that Samantha defeated Tori to be too much of um, shocking to me, just because, like I said, we understand that Samantha has been training since she was a child. Daniel basically probably just started training her as soon as she could walk, essentially. So, and we know that Tori has a background. Now, they do drop that Tori studied Muay Thai. That's dropped. I forget which episode it is, but it's dropped that she has actually studied Muay Thai. And when you watch the way that she fights, it explains a lot of the brutality. It explains the elbows. She throws a lot of elbows, and she does a lot of knee. I don't know if you know this, but she does a lot of knee attacks too, and that all comes from Muay Thai. Those are the a lot of the brutality that comes from Muay Thai is the fact that they will hit you with the hardest parts of the body, which are the elbows and the knees. That's what makes it so brutal. And it kind of fits Tori's narrative. You know what I mean? She is a little bit more abrasive and she is a little bit more direct. And that's also what Muay Thai is known for. It's direct. You just walk in a straight line and you beat your opponent down. You know, and whoever is the strongest or whoever can withstand the best, you know, it's kind of like Rocky and Creed. Whoever can take the best beating, you know, a lot of times is the person who wins. There's skill involved, but there's also just sort of the ability to endure is an important part of Muay Thai. I did Muay Thai like a billion years ago, it seems like now. It is interesting to see between the two. And even when Tori does, she takes that kind of studded bracelet thing and she puts it across her knuckles, and then she comes at Samantha with that. I felt like that was even like a little bit, again, a callback to not only Muay Thai, but specifically to actually kickboxer. Because remember, they put their hands in the broken glass and everything in the big battle. And that strike that she uses, she cuts the underside of her arm. That's one of the first big, like, kind of like damaging blows that Van Damme takes when he's fighting Tong Po in kickboxer. So I felt like that's the thing. That's part of the reason I had so much fun with this is I could see in the choreography that they're having fun calling back to a lot of great fun martial arts action movies, and the choreography is stuff that you just don't see that much anymore. Not like this. And that's what made it so much fun for me personally, watching it and going, oh, that's a callback to this, and that's a callback to that, and maybe I was seeing things that aren't there. But I had an awful lot of fun with that. But I wasn't too shocked that Samantha did actually defeat Tori. But the big shock for me was the fact that what happened to Miguel, because that is a cheap shot. That is a totally cheap shot. And already I didn't like Robbie. Now I pretty much hate Robbie.
Right.
Like before I didn't like him. And it's hard for me too, because Robbie is Johnny's son, so you want to see the two of them connect. You want to see that him repair that. You know, we see a little bit at the beginning of the episode because Robbie is still with Johnny, right? When we start the first day of school, and there's so much chaos at the end of this episode, and we have to talk about that before we get into speculation. I know what my big, super huge thing that happened at the very end of this episode. But what about you, Eric? What was your like? Because they give us pieces of things that may be coming, right? In season 3, they give us pieces of things. What was probably your breadcrumb or your sort of like foreshadowing or what do you want to call it for season 3? What was your big thing for this one?
It's really hard. It's really hard, in my opinion, to figure out exactly where they're going to go with this. I've seen a lot of speculation videos and all that kind of stuff. The only thing that we have kind of for sure which again, I mean, this show is not beyond using red herrings. We talked about one that I talked about earlier with the capture the flag scenario, where it looked like Hawk and and Miguel might have a rift, and that didn't happen. By the way, Hawk at the end shows amazing concern for Miguel, and in fact, that's why Hawk turns. That's Hawk's motivation for why he's with Kreese now and he's against Johnny, is because he holds Johnny responsible for that mercy crap, which has no place in Cobra Kai. No place in Cobra Kai. And he knows that's why Miguel lost the fight. He knows his buddy Miguel would have beaten the crap out of Robbie if it was not for the fact that he showed mercy. And that's why he's with Kreese now. And I like that. I like that. As Kreese would say, I like that. I like that. Yeah. Because it makes sense. It actually makes narrative sense of why Hawk is where he's at now. And I have big expectations and hope for Hawk. I can say that the actor has said he is trying. He said when they first were saying season 3 was happening, he said his plan was to put on some weight, and it'll be interesting to see if he did that or not. If he actually is like transformed even more for that part and everything like that, because Hawk's journey is really interesting to me.
Yes.
So, but the only concrete thing we have, and again, it could be a red herring, is Allie. We know Allie did that. She took Johnny's friend request, but Johnny doesn't know that she took his friend request because he threw his phone away and threw his car away.
Yeah.
Johnny's in a terrible place. So for me, the episode isn't much fun because Johnny's, my favorite character is Johnny. My second probably would be Miguel. And they're both in terrible positions at the end of this show. Terrible, terrible positions. You know what I mean? And, everything that I've heard about the second season has to do with Daniel and the fact that they actually filmed in Okinawa and there's something going on there. You and I know we're going to get into it because we've gotten into it over the air about some of that speculation. But the only real concrete thing we have right now, at least I feel like it's somewhat concrete, is that we're going to finally see Allie in some role coming back. Now, I think a lot of us, those of us that are Johnny fans, we want to see Johnny hook up with Allie. We would like to see that. That's kind of what I would like to see because Daniel's married. He's moved on. That's gone. Johnny said specifically he never got over Allie. That's part of the reason that his life is the crap pile it is. You know what I mean? Is because he just never got over his high school sweetheart. He never got really beyond high school. You know what I mean? He just got stuck in that zone, which happens. That happens to people all the time. They peak in high school. Just like Al Bundy in Married with Children. Same type of situation. So, that's the only kind of concrete thing I think we have. And I just hope it's not a red herring. I hope we get something with that, Allie's going to show up and maybe she's going to be the one that kind of brings Johnny back. Because at this point, Johnny looks like he's done. It looks like Johnny's story is almost over. Like you could have almost as easily just seen him walk into the ocean as he did walk away. You know what I mean? And that's like the last scene and the show's over. You know what I mean? Because he's in a real bad place. His son is basically a fugitive and a felon, okay? And his adopted son, if you will, Miguel, is possibly going to die, okay? The girl he was going out with hates him, that he was falling in love with, would finally maybe get over Allie, you know what I mean? And maybe have a life with Miguel's mom. And then Miguel would have been his stepson. Think about that, you know what I mean? That all that potential for where his life could have gone. And that's like all off the table right now. Like that's the Miguel's mom hates him and blames him for everything. And it's really not Johnny's fault. You know what I mean? I would blame Daniel and I would blame Sam much more than I would blame Johnny personally. To me, they're the ones that have instigated a lot of this.
Well, and along those lines, since you brought it up, let me go ahead and talk about some of the speculations because I've watched a bunch of speculation stuff too. And probably for me, the most interesting thing I've heard so far that it's not my theory, someone else's theory, is that they kind of drew some conclusions from some different things. One of them had to do with the fact that the composer who does all the music had teased a piece of music that's going to be in season 3, and that the person who was listening to it, this theory, said you could almost hear what sounds like air raid sirens, kind of like in the distance, kind of idea. And this whole thing, this person drew from all these different sources and connected all these dots. And the theory that came out, is that they feel like that Samantha's story in relation to Tori, right, and what's happening with Miguel is sort of analogous, right, and a contemporary retelling of what actually really happened between Miyagi and Sato.
Yeah, you teased this last
And
week. We talked
yeah,
about that a little bit.
I'm gonna get way deep into this theory because I think it's really interesting.
We do have a comment from the Rogues Gallery, and they have a theory that I have heard before, and I think deserves a little bit of being some attention, because I've heard this one, and it's kind of the feel good theory that's out there. So Bobby mentions Daniel and Johnny team up. Elizabeth Shue would show up in season 3 after a character in The Boys was written out. So there is that theory out there. I've heard it that basically, because what Dave is alluding to, because we talked about last week, is that Sam is kind of maybe the villain and this parallel with Miyagi's story. But a lot of people are like, Kreese is the villain, as he always has been and always will be. Kreese is the ultimate villain. And this is the theory that Daniel and Johnny might actually team up and maybe take down Kreese. That's one of the things that I've heard kind of put out there. And that perhaps Allie could be some sort of bridge between the two of them.
Well, and I do believe that. I do believe that Allie is going to be the bridge. And I think Allie is going to come in because she has a very unique role that she could fulfill, because they talk about that she's some kind of a pediatric surgeon.
Right. There's that theory too. There's a theory that she's going to come in and save Miguel. She's going to be the one that comes in and saves Miguel. I've heard that one. Yeah.
Which I think would be awesome to have her come in and save Miguel. That would be amazing. And I'm very excited, and I hope that she does return, because he's correct. Bobby mentions that her character was written out of The Boys. That's true. Her character died a horrible death, actually, in The Boys. But we're not talking about The Boys.
Spoiler alert. We're not even talking about The Boys. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, we're not even talking about it. But anyhow, I'm watching The Boys at the same time. So, here is so this theory is what's going to happen is, and how they get to Okinawa, I've heard all kinds of theories. Robbie runs off to Okinawa. They're trying to get Robbie back. I've heard all kinds of things right now. Regardless of how they get there, we've seen it. It looks like Daniel is going to have a training session, and he's going to connect with Chozen.
And that is from the one scene we have of season 3 confirmed. That was part of the trailer that Netflix did when they acquired season 1 and 2. They did a recap of season 1 and 2 as a trailer, and it ends with the scene of Daniel training apparently in Okinawa, and we hear a voice.
Right. And
that's the big speculation. Who's that voice? Who's talking to him?
Well, and we talked about it too, that they can't really recast the actor who played Sato. It's a shame that he's gone, because it'd be so amazing to see him come back. Because I've had this idea in my head that it'd be amazing if he could be that mentor that Daniel needs, because he would have a direct connection.
I think that's a great idea, but I don't want him recast. I think that's a great idea, but I do not want him recast, and I think it'd be kind of disrespectful to the actor since he's passed. You know what I mean? But I think Bobby's right with you. Bobby's right with you. He says Sato, one of the greatest villains ever, and best voice ever. That actor had an amazing, amazing voice.
Yeah, that's true. And here's what I think we're going to learn. Okay, talking about specifically what happens in Okinawa, I think that we're going to find out Chozen and Sato had repaired their relationship at some point, and their story is going to be a story of redemption, about how you can reach across, you can mend bridges, that just because things go wrong doesn't mean they always have to stay that way. I think there's going to be a redemption story there. I think Chozen is going to be running Sato's school just like he was when we saw the original Karate Kid, because he was his senior student. We saw him training the military personnel. I think all that's going to be happening in current day. And I think that Chozen will basically be the heir apparent, or the head of essentially Miyagi-Do in Okinawa, right? And I also think they're going to tell us too that after Miyagi passed, that Sato was Daniel's mentor to an extent, because there's things that Daniel knows how to do that we know he did not get from Miyagi. When we see him doing the bow kata and like a lot of this other stuff that we see him doing over the course of the second season, that was never shown to us. And now is it never shown to us, we never see Miyagi doing any of that stuff, even in the next Karate Kid, for example. Daniel had to learn that from someone. All right. So I have a feeling that Daniel and Chosen have a connection, that Sato at one point was one of Daniel's mentors. There's going to be, I'm hoping there's going to be a little bit of a rivalry, but a little bit of a friendship there, but we'll have to wait and see. But the one theory I've heard that I do think is true is I think that we're going to learn that Samantha's story does echo what happened with Miyagi. And I do think they're going to tell us that when Miyagi was probably more like Johnny than we ever realized, and that Miyagi's story and Johnny's story are going to have more parallels than we ever would have first thought. Because when you think about it, when we first meet Miyagi, he's working as a handyman, right? And he's in the same apartment complex. And when we see Johnny, what's Johnny doing? He's kind of working as a handyman, and he's living in that city. I have this feeling that we're going to get connections and illusions, and we're going to realize that the Karate Kid 1 and 2 is kind of like with Vader. I think it's a redemption story for Miyagi. And we're going to learn some things about Miyagi that we're going to be a little shocked by. And I have a feeling that Miyagi and Sato they did actually have that fight. And I have a feeling that Miyagi was not winning the fight. I think Sato was winning the fight. And I have this weird feeling that Sato was a little bit more in the right than we ever realized, because this show loves to flip the script and tell us that what we thought was bad was you didn't have the full picture. So what do you think about that? Now, that's a crazy theory. Just imagine if they were to do a Karate Kid prequel, imagine if the Johnny character was Miyagi.
Yeah, I can totally see them doing that. The way that I'm kind of looking at this is there's what I'd like to see and what I think is actually going to happen. And I can see your scenario happening. I can totally see your scenario happening. It's not what I want. I'm just going to put it right out there. It's not what I want. It's not what I want to see. But I totally can see it happening. I can totally see that exactly being the way it goes, because it makes narrative sense. Like you mentioned, there's a parallel, and that parallel is deliberate. That's obviously deliberate, showing Johnny as sort of a Miyagi, as the mentor. And the parallels are obvious. You just mentioned them, like the fact that they're both handyman. They're both at these crappy apartment complexes. They both end up helping this kid that's being beat up. They both beat up the kid's tormentors. I mean, there's parallel after parallel after parallel. So the question becomes, how do you solidify that? I don't like the idea of all of a sudden we realize Miyagi had this dark side. I don't like that. I personally hate that idea. I can see it happening, though. I just want to be clear that based on what we've seen so far and the way that this show operates, I could totally see that happening. I don't want to see that happen because I think Miyagi always kind of showed that he got what he got from his father, and that was something that was ingrained with him from when he was a little boy. Miyagi-Do karate is actually supposed to be a family-style karate that basically goes from father to son, and because Miyagi's child died in labor, he had no one else to pass it on, and Daniel becomes his surrogate son, and he passes it on to him. So I'm mixed about it. I think it's a very likely scenario. I could totally see it happening. It fits the narrative very well, but it's not what I want to see happen. It's not the direction I would go if I was the showrunner on the show. But then again, I've talked about how I thought there's some missteps in the show. In particular, I didn't like the fact that Miyagi-Do is all poached students from Cobra Kai. I thought that I didn't like the way they went with that. And the fact the jocks, the popular rich kids, just disappear in season 2. You know, I would kind of like to see them come back and show some other third way that's out there, because right now it just feels like it feels like it's like Daniel and Johnny have sort of created this world, which they have. I mean, the characters literally have created this world that we're talking about with Cobra Kai. But this, like, it's almost like everything on the outside isn't impacting it at all. Like we talked about the missteps of, hey, why didn't they put some MMA stuff in here? You know what I mean? Which there was apparently a deleted scene that specifically had a confrontation between Johnny and a jiu-jitsu guy. You know what I mean? I would like to see more of that kind of stuff. The problem is where we're at now. Could you really go back and do that? Would it work? I don't know. Probably not, because you have an entire season where all those things were just ignored and were never brought in. I think it's kind of going to be interesting because how is Daniel even going to go to Okinawa? The place that he's left in at the end of season 2 is basically his wife has told him, no more karate, you're done. So essentially it's a choice between karate and her. So if he's going to keep on doing any karate stuff, he's going to have to leave her, which would be good for me because I don't like her. I don't like that character. She doesn't offer anything to me. To me, she's just a waste. I don't like her. So if she was gone, I'd be like, cool. You know what I mean? Okay, now this is going to get interesting. Now, if Allie comes back, could we have it all happen all over again? Now, Daniel's dejected. Daniel's lost everything. Johnny's lost everything. They're both kind of in the same place, and then Allie pops up. You know what I mean? In the middle of both of these guys, kind of at their lowest points in life. Now Allie comes along, and what'd she do? Maybe she saves Miguel. You know what I mean? And she's kind of like taken over. You know, it would be interesting in my opinion. But I am questioning because we know that Daniel does go to Okinawa. We know that. We know he goes to Okinawa. Ralph Macchio has said that. He said that he goes to Okinawa. They filmed in Okinawa, which they did not do for Karate Kid Part 2, despite what a lot of people think. They did not film in Okinawa. They actually did film in Okinawa for Cobra Kai Season 3. Obviously, that means budget's gone up. Obviously, that means that there's going to be more production value this season, I think. But my question becomes, how is he going to get there exactly? And I can see what you're saying. I can totally see that he gets some mysterious letter. There's one way I would like to see this play out, which is I think it would be cool because it would parallel Reese a little bit. Is that if Dino got a letter from Sato, quote unquote, saying, hey, I would like to see you. You know what I mean? Like he could say I'm dying or whatever the letter says. I would really like to see you again. And he decides, okay, I need this break. Maybe, like you said, they did actually train together. There was a relationship between the two of them. Sato is another student of Miyagi-Do karate, which is also an interesting dynamic. So he decides, I'm going to go see him. He's dying. And it's kind of like Reese. And it's like when he goes in to see Sato, Chosen just like jumps out like, hey, you know what I mean? Like he's dead. It's just you and me now. You know what I mean? And it goes somewhere from there. I think that would be interesting. I think it would be really interesting if Chosen comes back and he has some sort of role to play and he can you mentioned this off the air. We talked about this when we were talking about all this. The thing with Chosen that's of course way different than Johnny is that Chosen tried to kill Daniel. You know, Johnny beat up on Daniel and Johnny fought him in a tournament, but Chosen tried to kill him. You know what I mean? So if the two of them got together, which I think is going to happen, I think that's going to happen. I think that's the only thing you can do. I don't think they're going to recast Sato. I don't think they're going to do that. They could, but I don't think they're going to do that because this production has been so respectful of the legacy actors. I think that what they're going to do is they're going to use Chosen. Chosen's coming back for sure. I think Allie's going to have some role to play. I just feel like she has to. If she doesn't, it's like, gosh, you producers really screwed us, man. What was that all about? You know what I mean? That you're telling me that whole Facebook thing was just a throwaway. You know what I mean? So the question is exactly how that's all going to come together. You know what I mean? To bring, because you're bringing back a lot of different elements. If you're bringing back Allie and you're bringing back Chosen, you know, and then how does Johnny fit in all this? Because this is supposed to be Johnny's story. This is not supposed to be Daniel's story.
Well, I think what I think is going to happen is I think Johnny and Daniel are both going to be in Okinawa. I think that what's going to happen is they're going to end up going to Okinawa trying to get Robbie, right? They might even be trying to come at it from different angles.
How would Robbie get to Okinawa?
That's the part I don't understand. But you have to remember
that defies logical belief, in my opinion. That you're kind of like You're pushing my suspension of disbelief if Robbie winds up in Okinawa and Daniel's chasing after him.
But you have to. But they kind of allude to that because Robbie has that book where he's reading about Okinawa. So and Robbie needs a reset. Okay, he needs some kind of a dramatic reset to put him in a hopefully a
I
better
think he needs
place.
to be in prison with Dutch. How about that?
I did too. I don't like Robbie at all.
That's
but
where
anyhow,
we'll see Dutch. Dutch will be back in season 3 when we see Robbie in prison, and they're going to be cellmates together.
Cobra Kai in prison.
Two birds with one stone. We get to see Dutch again, and we Robbie's stories resolve. We don't have to deal with them anymore.
Right. Well, so, but I also think Kumiko is going to return. I still prefer Daniel with Kumiko. Like I'm kind of hoping that's what happens.
So you want him to leave his wife too?
Yeah, pretty much. Because I always felt like that he almost died fighting for Kumiko.
Right.
And I felt like that they should have been together. Because just so everyone knows, my Karate Kid collection of films ends with 2. I love part 1 and I love part 2, and then part 3. Next Karate Kid. But I love, because when I tell people how much I love those films, I always say I imagine in my mind that Daniel and Kumiko got married and they're happily together. Like that's how Daniel's story ended for me. Eventually, he and Kumiko did get together. So
what did he say in 3 about her? Why weren't they together? Didn't he say something about that?
She basically got a great offer to go to some dance school or something, and so she couldn't pass that up, and so they're sort of apart, And the illusion could be that maybe they get back together, but obviously that didn't happen. But I do think that what is going to happen is I don't think it's going to be necessary that Miyagi was quote unquote the bad guy. I think they're just going to use Miyagi's journey to better help us better understand Johnny even more than we thought.
But I think at this point everybody roots for Johnny. I think most people are on my side. I think most people want to see Johnny win at this point, and they're really rooting for Johnny. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel at this point you don't have to sell us on that anymore. We get it. This is Johnny's opportunity to be Miyagi.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I don't think we need to make Miyagi more like Johnny. I guess that's where I'm coming from. There we go. That's where I'm coming from. I want to see Johnny be like Miyagi. I don't want to see Miyagi be like Johnny.
Right. I understand what you're saying.
Let's get back to the Rogues Gallery, because actually they're talking about what you were talking about. So Bobby Chambers said, "Dave, you just blew my mind. Ha ha ha. The show is all about turning the narrative upside down." You're onto something there. And I do agree with you, Bobby, in terms of that as far as how the narrative is played so far, this theory makes a lot of sense. It makes a ton of sense.
I totally see that. And obviously I believe in my theory because it's my theory, but it's not totally my theory. Like I said, it's someone else's theory. I'm just putting a little bit of my own spin on it.
And we've obviously talked about a little bit already, but do they bring back Sato's pupil? His name eludes me right now. We have been talking about Chosen. And I think, yes, I think the answer is definitively Chosen is the person that we're hearing.
They have to.
In that teaser. We thought it was Sato. We looked it up. The actor unfortunately has passed. So I think I can speak for Dave too, that we think that's Chosen and that's not Sato, because I don't think they would be disrespectful and recast him. I just don't think they would do that, just based on what they've look at all the casting choices they've made so far. I mean, look at the image I have up right now. They brought back all these guys from the original Cobra Kai. They brought back so many of the original actors. We have this tease that even Elizabeth Shue is coming back. I just don't think they would recast Sato and have him be the one. You know what I mean?
And just to be clear, the actor who played Chozen is a martial artist. He's been in a bunch of stuff. He's very active. Like, he could totally come in and be Chozen again, only older. And I hadn't thought about this until right now. There's also the possibility too that through Chosen's story, we could see a little bit about what Robbie's about to be going through. Because if you think about it, Chosen tried to kill somebody, and then
Right.
he kind of, you know what I mean? We don't really see what happens to him after he almost kills somebody. So there is the possibility too that maybe in some of Chosen's story we get allusions, to something about what's going to be happening with Robbie or what is happening with Robbie.
No, that makes a lot of
'Cause-
sense. That does actually make a lot of sense. So there is a narrative thread that can show a commonality there, and it's clear that the people that make Cobra Kai are Karate Kid super fans, who I think pour over every inch of all this stuff. And I could see them doing something like that where they would tie those two threads together. Unfortunately, I just don't like Robbie as a character. I would like to see him written out of season 3. I would like to see him put in prison, and I think that's where he belongs. And we have to move on. And Johnny can visit him and try to mend things that way. And Johnny would have an opportunity to really be there for him if he's in prison or whatever. He could come visit him, periodically or whatever. But as far as, I'm just not a fan of the character. You know what I mean? So I don't really want to see him redeemed. I don't think he is redeemable at this point. I think he needs to pay for what he did. You know what I mean? I think he needs to pay for what he did. And if Hawk doesn't kill him, which that would be really interesting too, if Hawk actually killed him, you know what I mean? Or something like that, So you can think about that. That would be really dramatic, But other than that kind of scenario, I just don't want to see him around. I definitely want to see him get with Sam, even though I think Sam's a little devil girl, but I don't want him to see him get with Sam and win the girl.
No, I don't either.
You know what I mean? And I don't necessarily think he's good for Johnny. You know what I mean? So I'll just say it,
I would really like to see there be a dramatic moment where it looks like maybe, Robbie is on the run and they find him, and then Hawk has been tracking him at the same time. And maybe Hawk has beefed up and he's like on a Batman revenge thing. And he's like, I've got you now. And he beats the holy snot out of Robbie.
That would be awesome.
That
would be awesome. That would feel so good to see that happen. And you give Hawk a little bit of redemption, you know what I mean? And, all that kind of stuff that basically he's loyal to his friend Miguel, you know what I mean? All that, that he's going to avenge him. He's taken something good from that bad part of Kreese, you know what I mean? Because there is something to be said for that. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's kind of nice sometimes to have a bad boyfriend. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sometimes it's good to have somebody like that. That's not like everybody else who maybe are the good guys and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes it's nice to have that friend who's kind of an asshole, who's kind of a jerk, but he's your friend, right? So he has your back. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because that's true in life. That's exactly how it's true in life. Everybody probably has a friend like that. Yeah, he's an asshole. He doesn't treat other people very well. But you know what? He's got my back. And that's all that really matters to me. That's why I tolerate this guy, because I know he has my back,
Right.
So I could see Hawk fulfilling a kind of a role like that. Whether that's what's going to happen or not, I don't know. There's so many added elements, it feels like, that are going to happen. Because like I said, I have said, I was more joking about the prison thing, but I do want to see Dutch. I would like to see Dutch. And I think Dutch could work very well in tandem with Kreese if he's still that old school Cobra Kai guy, because it sounds like he is, because he's in prison. So if he gets released from prison and Kreese is there to see him when he comes out, and now he's got like one of his other pupils with him, you know what I mean? He's really rebuilding Cobra Kai. That would be pretty interesting, Well, and then have a confrontation between. And another thing is, in the original Karate Kid, because I am enough of a fan to know this. In the original Karate Kid, Dutch does fight Daniel, but we don't get to see the fight. Do you remember that? They show Dutch is like going insane. He's jumping around. He's ready to fight. And all we hear is a voiceover of point, winner. And the match just started. And we don't even get to see what happened. You know what I mean? Like, they don't show the whole match. And I think that would be kind of cool to see Dutch have another moment with Daniel. You know what I mean? To kind of say like, hey, Johnny's not the only one that's got some issues with you. You know what I mean? I've been waiting, man. I've been waiting for my rematch, So I don't know whether that will happen, but that's something I would love to see happen is to love to see Dutch back and kind of still being that kind of evil Cobra Kai,
Well, and there's a lot of people that want to see Bad Boy Barnes back too, There's a lot of people calling for Terry Silver to show back up. So there is a lot of interesting surprises that we could still kind of be in for too, that still fits within the Karate Kid lore, including obviously bringing Dutch in as well. Because if they do decide to do this, as Bobby suggests, which I do think eventually that's where we're going to be, I do think eventually Daniel and Johnny are going to end up having to work together. And the reason being is because I'm a big believer, and I talked about this last episode, and the concept of the yin and the yang. You know, that one cannot exist without the other, right? You know, it's not about eliminating one. It's about finding harmony and balance, about finding a way to reconcile these two different things. And I feel like that, and I could be wrong, but I feel like that's what the writers of Cobra Kai are setting up for us, is that at the end of the day, it's Johnny's story, but Johnny finding peace with Daniel is not about quote unquote kumbaya holding hands. I think it's just the two of them finding their place in the world, and like the yin and the yang, you know what I mean? They just can coexist and still be different. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having diametrically opposed views. And this, again, talking about political, I don't want to get too political, but I feel like sometimes that this is a concept that a lot of people have lost sight of.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think it's a really important concept. We don't all have to be on the same page, totally, right? We have to find a way to exist together. You know, that because together we are stronger than when we are apart. And as exemplified by the yin and the yang, it takes both to make a world, you know? So I think that what we're going to learn, at least I believe, it's Johnny's story, but I don't think it's about Johnny, quote unquote, making peace with the past, or quote unquote, making peace with Daniel. I think it's just the two of them learning to exist in the same place. The two of them finding a way to be at peace while still being diametrically opposed. You know, Daniel's big problem is that he keeps thinking that he has to destroy Cobra Kai. That's not true. That's not the only way to approach something that you don't agree with. You know, now certain things are evil and they shouldn't exist. And I think that's what Kreese represents, is there are certain things that shouldn't be allowed to exist. Whether you want to look at them as old ways of thinking or whatever, depending upon how you want to view that, you know, there is quote unquote true evil in the world. But I think where Daniel and Johnny are concerned, I think for them, they just have to find a way to exist and be at peace with each other. But they can still be different. They don't have to be the same. It's more important that we find common ground, right? And that we get along in order to work together to make a stronger whole, right? To make a stronger group than necessarily having to tear each other down. Because that's the problem. Johnny is fighting to survive, and Daniel is just trying to destroy Johnny. In a weird way, it is the flip of the movie. Because, you know, to an extent,
it's absolutely
Johnny,
the flip of the movie. That's what this is all about.
So,
we use that term, flip the script, all the time. That's the essence of Cobra Kai. It's the essence of the show. This is Johnny's story. And that's one thing I think that happens from a practical standpoint is I'm sure Ralph Macchio as an actor wants something to work with. And the producers have to give him something to work with. He has to have a certain amount of screen time and all that kind of stuff. I think that's what's going on. And it's just a practical reality to get him to be in the show. As otherwise, he's not going to be in the show. But this is not his story. And I hope he understands that as an actor, that this is Johnny's story. Because I'm sure that they push for things. I'm sure they pitch things. They both have producer credits. Zaba and Macchio both have producer credits on this show. So I'm sure that they get input because they are the stars. And hey, if they don't want to do something, it's not going to happen. You know what I mean? So there is that dynamic. But personally, as a fan of this show and as someone who really has enjoyed Johnny's story, I would get some satisfaction out of seeing Johnny finally win and beat Daniel. I really would. And he can show mercy at the end. He can let him back up. He can grab him by the hand and let him back up, but let him know, you know what? Now I beat you too. Now we're equal. You know what I mean? So I would love to see that.
And there is a great cinematic, again, 80s callback that could happen in this moment. and that's Rocky.
Right.
That's the thing. That's the thing between. Because see, this is the thing. This is the thing that's really cool. Because I keep thinking about this because, of course, the director who did Karate Kid is also the same director that did Rocky. And one of the fun things is how eventually Apollo Creed and Rocky Balboa, how they find a friendship.
Yeah.
And again, together, they are stronger,
Right.
right? They're not the same person. They don't exactly see eye to eye, but they find this strength between the two of them, and they do form a friendship, right?
But each one of them won one fight, right? Each
Yeah.
one of them won one fight. And then the other thing is, at the end of Rocky 3, they decide to have a rematch, and we never know who won that fight. And I really like that because they're warriors, they're boxers. You know, what do boxers do? They box. You know what I mean? So, but we never know what happened. But that is, when you talk about balance, that's balance because they had a 1-for-1, and then they decide, you know what? We're going to decide this, just you and me. Nobody else, not even the audience, gets to know who won that fight at the end of Rocky 3. And so there's a great connection there because there's tons of connections between Karate Kid and Rocky. So I would love to see something like that. That would be awesome. And
I think I have a feeling that's kind of where eventually that we may be headed because that's the big thing. Because when Apollo helps out Rocky, his big thing is you're going to owe me a favor. What's the favor? Like that's the big. What's the favor, right? And then eventually we get to the end, and there's no audience. There's no one there. It's just these two men, and they're going to settle it. And there's that scene where Creed's got the mouth. He's like, ding, ding, right?
I was just thinking of that.
Yeah. They're just coming
ding,
in.
Ding, let's go.
Yeah. So,
and there's not even a ref, too. Important to point out, there's not even a ref.
Yeah.
It's just they're going to go at it, and they're going to settle this like men.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a good way to go. That would definitely be a good way to go. Whether that's what they do or not, we're just going to have to see. But we do know they're going to Okinawa. At least Daniel is. And we can kind of, I think, reasonably assume Allie's going to play some sort of role in season 3.
Yeah, I think for sure. But yeah.
Fingers crossed, because they do use red herrings in this. So we'll just have to see. And I do want to see some sort of some really cool arc with Hawk. I think a lot of people like Hawk. I think he's a fan favorite, much more so than Robbie. So I would like to see something happen with him. I'd like to see him kick Dimitri's ass. How about that? I would like to see him just kick his ass.
Well, and the story and it's weird because the story they give us is that Dimitri actually defeats Hawk in the big battle royale.
I didn't buy that.
I didn't like that.
I didn't buy that. I did not just not like it. I didn't buy it. I don't think it was earned. I don't think it makes any sense. Hawk has been training longer than Dimitri. He's much more aggressive than Dimitri. He would have cleaned his clock. And I didn't agree with that at all. So
yeah, that's the one sort of movie moment fight that happens for sure in the big brawl, because I didn't really buy that either, because when Dimitri hits him with that kick and then kind of knocks him out, I'm just sort of like, I don't know about that.
No, I didn't buy it.
Yeah, because
two different things. I didn't like it because, yes, I'm more of a Hawk fan than Dimitri fan, but I also didn't buy it because I don't think it was narratively earned. It wasn't earned.
Well, and my hope for Hawk is that he does find in karate, in Cobra Kai karate, for example, I hope he does continue to find the discipline, the strength from within, like all those great things that come from the study of the martial arts, the confidence that, whatever. But at the same point too, I really hope that he finds that more evolved, even though at the end of this, it seems like he and Kreese are simpatico. I do hope that he does find a way out so that his story is kind of ends on a better note than where it looks like he's headed. Because I don't want to see Hawk just become the villain too. Like, I don't want him to just be Kreese's number one guy. Like, I hope that they do something more interesting with him. So we'll see.
I don't know. I would like to see him just go out there and kick some ass. You know what I mean? That's just me. I'm different in that way. I don't need it to be all simpatico and
no. That's
and serendipitous and all that kind of stuff.
No. All I'm saying is that I hope for Hawk, for example, you were talking about Dutch. We know that Dutch is in prison. That
Right.
Dutch never found a more evolved view of the world.
And there's
And it
always going to
landed
be that guy. There's always
right.
going to be that guy. That's my point.
I don't want that to be Hawk's story.
You don't
I
want Hawk
want
to be
Hawk.
Dutch?
No, I want Hawk to still be Hawk, but at the same point, I want him to find. I would rather him come out the other side and be Hawk from Spencer for Hire than necessarily wind up apparently like Dutch did. Does that make sense?
Not really, but it's funny. But Bobby's coming to Dimitri's defense, and Bobby says Dimitri is hilarious, though. He has great one-liners. So there is that. Apparently there is a Dimitri fan club out there. Who would have guessed it? I wouldn't have, but hey, everybody's entitled to their opinion on the Retro Rogue Show.
All right. So, well, I think we've definitely talked this out. Is there any other theories or anything else?
I like to leave it with the Rogues Gallery. That's a good note to end it on. So if we got a Dimitri fan out there, more power to you. Nothing wrong with that.
Right. All right. Well, then there you go. So I guess let's go ahead and I don't have the banners up, but do we want to go ahead and segue over into pop culture news?
Yes. Let me see if I have the banner here.
Okay, cool.
And I can put that up. And I think we'll try to, let's see, we're over the 2-hour mark, so we're going to have to go pretty fast, I think, with whatever.
I'll keep it short because mine is mostly speculation. So, and then if you want, I'll just go first and get mine out of the way because mine's just kind of like talking points and a little bit of speculation, and then I'm out because I just have the one thing. So, so here in the pop culture news segment, we talk about anything that's happened in the world of pop culture news that we think you, our dear valued viewer, our dear valued listener, would find interesting and worthy of discussion. It could be anything that piques Eric's interest or anything that piques mine. But at the end of the day, we hope it's something that you would enjoy hearing about and you would enjoy discussing. So up first here in pop culture news, I don't have a banner graphic for it. I don't have anything special for it because to make a long story short, it's a lot of rumor. That's what it is. It's a lot of rumors. So we're going to let this Catwoman Batman image here kind of roll on. And I'm just going to talk about it's a little bit of DC and it's a little bit of Marvel rumor, and it all ties into this basic concept of the multiverse. Now, this is coming from a lot of different sources, some of them on YouTube, some of them actually from different stories that I've read, but there's a lot of speculation about how both Marvel and the DC cinematic universes are going to begin to explore with the idea of alternate realities. Now, we know that the Doctor Strange movie, and there's a lot of belief in theory and conjecture that the WandaVision, because we did get a trailer for WandaVision, we reviewed that last episode, that we know that it's going to deal with the multiverse because the title of the Doctor Strange movie is Multiverse of Madness. Now, on the DC side, there have been a lot of announcements in regards to the Flash movie and how it's going to tie into Flashpoint. There's been a lot of talk that, and I believe it's all but confirmed, Michael Keaton's going to be reprising Batman in the Flash movie, but Ben Affleck is also going to come back and actually be Batman in essentially the same movie, so that we're going to have Batmen from alternate realities. Again, this is all taking us back to actually the CW shows and what the CW shows did with their Crisis event, where we saw different versions of Flash, different versions of Superman, and this idea and the concept that the DC universe, all these different stories have all happened. They all happened, and they're all part of the tapestry of that universe, but they happened on alternate Earths. And there's a lot of belief, a lot of conjecture that that's how we're going to obviously have two Batmen, right, in this Flash movie. But here's the interesting thing I wanted to bring up specifically in relation to this. I am hearing a lot of rumors and a lot of speculation that people who at one point had been offered roles in the MCU, at one time had tested but did not get roles in the MCU, are going to actually get to play those parts in the Multiverse of Madness. Specifically, I'm talking about these rumors that are floating around that Tom Cruise may actually be Tony Stark / Iron Man in Multiverse of Madness, maybe in only a cameo, maybe part of the film, and also John Krasinski may actually show up as Captain America, and that they would be alternate multiverse versions of Captain America and Iron Man that may be different from what we expect. And for those of you who may go, well, how is that going to work? Hopefully you saw the CW Crisis event and you see how you can have different versions of Superman where their story didn't turn out quite the way that you thought, or a different version of Batman where their story didn't turn out quite the way that you thought. But this is a way, because it's been talked about before, that Tom Cruise at one point was their choice to play Tony Stark / Iron Man. And basically, in the process of contract negotiations, it just didn't come to be. John Krasinski apparently did test, I think, at one point for Captain America, but Chris Evans ended up getting the role. But this is an interesting idea. This idea of multiple Batmen, multiple Supermen, multiple, now we're talking about Iron Man, multiple Captain Americas. And it sounds like an outlandish theory until you realize that Civil War, I've heard, Civil War came out from the fact that they knew that DC had intended to do this Batman v Superman idea, and they kind of wanted to beat him to the punch, and that's kind of why we ended up getting Cap versus Iron Man. Now, I don't know how much I want to put into that, but we can see where definitely Marvel's going, okay, well, they're going here, we're going to do that first. I talked about last episode along these same lines, the idea that we're going to get they're going to be establishing the Thunderbolts over the course of the Disney Plus shows, that eventually, so that Marvel may get to do, quote unquote, the supervillain team versus the superhero team, because we haven't had that yet. The most exciting thing for me at the end of Justice League was when Deathstroke and Lex Luthor get together on that boat, and I'm thinking, ooh, we're going to get the Legion of Doom versus the Justice League? Hell yeah, right? But it looks like now they're going to have to try and set that up again. But I have a feeling, just like as always, because Marvel's always kind of beating DC to the punch in the films. They do something first, and they kind of show them how it could have been done. So I wonder if in Multiverse of Madness, I wonder if Marvel's going to do the multiverse idea before DC gets around to it with their Batman. I wonder if they're going to do it first with Iron Man and Captain America. Now, what do you think about this crazy theory, Eric?
No, it makes complete sense. DC and Marvel have always been rivals. They always play with each other's ideas. They always have. There's always an argument of who copied who. I make the argument, and I think I make a very good argument, that Thanos is a copy of Darkseid. Straight up is a copy of Darkseid. I think both versions are awesome. I love both of those villains, but Thanos is a complete ripoff of Darkseid. And those are the kind of debates we have, those of us who know enough to get ourselves into trouble when it comes to DC and Marvel. And there's always been that rivalry, and there's always been that idea of the multiverse. I think everybody I feel like most people would understand the multiverse, because if you watched Endgame, I felt they explained it fairly well. They even went so far as to say time travel is bullshit. That can't happen, which, by the way, I believe that as well. If you did do something like that, you would instantly create another universe. You know what I mean? From that point that you showed up, it would just be a different universe. Because I do believe in the possibility of the parallel universe theory. You know what I mean? Time travel, I think, doesn't work because of all the paradoxes. It just can't work. It won't happen. It's not possible. So I like the way they explained it in Endgame. And of course, they provided all the seeds for the multiverse, and they continued that. They teased that more in the last Spider-Man movie, where even though it was a sham, spoiler alert, they were teasing about the multiverse, that they thought they had someone from the multiverse. So the multiverse concept is being very well established in Marvel. It's going to be further established in WandaVision. There's no doubt of that in my mind. That's exactly what that is. That is going to be the multiverse. You know what I mean? It's going to set up Doctor Strange. The question is, can DC do it better? And I think they absolutely can. And the ace they have up their sleeve is that DC, it's funny what you just said, because you were saying like, geez, it seems like Marvel always beats DC to the punch. Come on, Dave. We're old school. We know that wasn't always the case. Marvel movie used to be a joke. It was all about Superman and Batman, and these were way better than anything that Marvel could come up with. I mean, they were considered like B movie material, you know what I mean, back in the day. And that was big reason for that was that Marvel was still independent. DC had been acquired by Time Warner, and they were already making high quality feature films, legendary feature films, and way before Marvel got there. And of course, what did Marvel ultimately have to do? They sold out to Disney so they could compete. You know what I mean? And so they could keep making high quality movies and things like that. And they've done a fantastic job with the MCU, a fantastic job. But what DC has is the legacy. And I've heard rumors that we're going to see George Clooney in the Flash movie. We're going to see Val Kilmer in the Flash movie. There's this huge legacy of content that DC has that Marvel just doesn't have. So it'll be interesting. Yeah, it might be interesting to see Tom Cruise as Iron Man, but a lot of people are going to be like, what the frack is that? You know what I mean? What is that? Tom Cruise as Iron Man? But they know George Clooney was Batman. They know Val Kilmer was Batman. They know Michael Keaton was Batman. You know what I mean? They know all these other people that have been in these roles because they were successful in these roles. And when they show up in the Flash movie, I think people are going to be like, that's freaking awesome. Whereas when Tom Cruise shows up, I think a lot of people are going to be like, I don't know how I feel about this.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out because I've heard rumor too that Brandon Routh's Kingdom Come version of Superman will also be returning and reprising his role in the Flash movie as well. I've heard rumblings of that. And I've heard too that the theory with the establishment of the multiverse is so eventually what they could have is an even more epic battle and do the Secret Wars storyline for a later huge Marvel event and build towards Secret Wars, where Doctor Doom is the ultimate villain, as in Secret Wars was. But that instead of it necessarily being like the villains on one side and the heroes on the other, that what we may actually have is, this idea of these different universes that are colliding. So you'd have, Iron Man from two multiverses, you know what I mean? Having to try and settle which one would finally be allowed to exist. Which again is kind of more like the Continuum storyline that DC did several years ago. But it's that maybe kind of idea. So we'll see. I think all this stuff is interesting. It's fun to talk about speculatively. You know what I mean? There's just so many rumors swirling around, and there's no one source to go to. And I thought it'd be good just to throw it out there, just kind of like, well, here's the elephant in the room. Boom. Like let's just throw it out there and see what people are thinking or see how they react or how they feel about these different things. But it's interesting to hear your opinion because I could see that. I could see where people are just like, well, where did Tom Cruise come from? That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
I could totally see that. And I think some people, in all honesty, would be disappointed if John Krasinski showed up as Captain America at this point, just because there's been so much fan swell, love, belief, and hope that he might actually be Reed Richards. I think if he shows up and he's not Mr. Fantastic, I think people will be sort of feel slightly slighted, even though they were never promised John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic. I still think there's going to be a large group of people that have bought this idea that are going to feel slighted if it turns out, well, he's a multiverse version of Captain America, and this Fantastic Four thing is just that. It's just a fan theory, and it was never going to happen.
Yeah, I could see that. I could totally see that.
So that's pretty much my only pop culture thing for tonight. I just felt like there was so much circling all these different rumors, certain things we know for sure are definitely happening, certain things we don't know for sure, but it's the same thing being reported and everyone's saying, well, I've got sources over here saying this and I've got sources over here saying that. And there's enough commonality that where there is smoke, there is fire. There's got to be some truth to some of this. So I'm just curious. Well, only time will tell, but I thought it was worth discussing. So that's my pop culture for tonight. So
now those rumors are all over the place, and I have heard the one about Tom Cruise. So it'll be interesting to see if that actually happens. Now, Bobby Chambers has a vote, which is that he wants to see Carl Urban for Wolverine. I like that. I like that a lot. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, and here's the really great thing about Bobby's theory too. If they do that in the multiverse of madness, he doesn't have to continue. You know what I mean? Like I would love to just see him be Wolverine, period. But if for some reason if they just want to do a one-off with Carl Urban
Right.
as Wolverine, they could totally do that in Multiverse of Madness, and then we could have someone else later on. I love that idea because he would be amazing as well. I mean, Carl Urban is great as anything. I
Bobby
mean,
brings up the point. Hopefully, everyone forgets he was in Thor, and it's funny
well,
because Carl Urban is such a great actor. I don't associate him with Thor, even though I know the part he played and everything like that. I really think Carl Urban is like another level actor, in my personal opinion. He is like an amazing actor. And the two reasons I think that is because of his version of McCoy and how much he just like channeled DeForest Kelly as if DeForest Kelly had possessed his body. And then also what he did in Dredd. We've talked about Dredd. I think he's just an actor on a different level. And I don't think he has the ego that gets in the way of so many of these other genre, or I should say so many of these other mainstream actors that are trying to do genre, because genres, is popular right now. I talk about the mask thing all the time. They always got to show their face, even though the character doesn't call for that, even though it destroys the mystique, even though that's not the character. Well, I want to, that's my moneymaker. I got to show it, Carl Urban isn't like that. He's like a real actor. He actually believes in embracing the character. I don't associate him with Thor because I associate him with Star Trek. I associate him with Dredd. In Thor, he was just an actor. To me, that's not Carl Urban. That was just a goofy guy in Thor, So to me,
well,
I don't think he'll have that much of a problem. I think a lot of people have no idea that was Carl Urban. You know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have no idea that was Carl Urban in Thor Ragnarok. No idea.
But to take what Eric is saying and take it even a step further. Number one, because it's a multiverse idea, they could be more similar. Hit the executioner character from Thor and Wolverine. Like you don't even have to explain it, because if you're paying any attention to the things that are being done, it would kind of work. But here's the most important thing about specifically Carl Urban. I bet Carl Urban would totally wear the Wolverine mask, and he'd never want to take the stupid thing off anyway.
Oh, that's
and he would just be Wolverine.
He will not be Hugh Jackman. He will be Wolverine. Oh my God, you are so correct right there. I can totally see that. He will actually wear the mask. You know what I mean? And that's my point. Again, that's my point with these other actors who are really mainstream, but they're doing genre because it's popular. You know what I mean? Because it's their moneymaker. As opposed to people that really embrace genre and get it. And Bobby Chambers makes another great point, which is if Chris Evans can be Human Torch and Cap, then Carl Urban should be allowed. You know what I mean? Perfect. Perfect,
how fun would it be if Chris Evans was Human Torch in the Multiverse of Madness, even if for just a brief cameo?
Right.
That would be hilarious. So now. And here's the thing, too. The other great thing about Carl Urban, because I love this idea, we know from him playing Dredd that he knows how to act with his jaw, and he knows how to do those contortion-y things. And I bet you he would portray the most enraged berserker Wolverine we've ever seen. I bet he would have the cigar. Because that's the thing. In the Multiverse of Madness, they can give us the version of Wolverine that we all really want.
Right.
And then when they do it again, they can reinvent it a little bit and tame it down. But for Multiverse of Madness, give us the Berserker Rage with the cigar and the mask on at the same time, no less. Like, why not? That would be freaking amazing.
Now,
I would love that.
Now, I will say this. I do know, because I don't want to be putting too much shade on Hugh Jackman, because I think he did a lot with the role as well, and I really respect what he did for Wolverine. I know he's had interest since the beginning, especially when they were first talking about Fox being acquired by Disney. He was all like, hey, can I be in an Iron Man movie? You know what I mean? Or something like that as Wolverine, now that this is happening. So I could see Hugh Jackman wanting to come back for a role like that, even if it was just a cameo, because I know he was talking about it right even when the negotiations first started. He was like, hey, does this mean that I can be in an Iron Man movie or Captain America movie or something like that? Because he wanted that to happen. He wanted to see Wolverine and Iron Man, Wolverine, Captain America, Wolverine in the MCU. So there is that as well. So as far as I don't know if there's any possibility of that actually happening. I do know he was interested in it.
I would personally, if it like I loved him as Wolverine, but I do feel like that with Logan that it's done. However, because we're talking about the multiverse and we're talking about madness, it would be fun for him to have a really fun, interesting cameo in the film. And maybe he could be someone like Doctor Strange. Like he could be an alternate multiverse version of someone else besides necessarily Wolverine. So there's that's the thing that's really fun about this idea. There's all different ways that they could kind of play this idea out, and pay it off in interesting ways. But I personally like Bobby's suggestion about Carl Urban as Wolverine. I'm ready to buy a ticket for that right now.
Yeah, I definitely think he would embrace the character like we've never seen before.
Yeah,
and that's very high praise, because I'm not trying to cast shade on Hugh Jackman. I think he did a fantastic job.
Oh no, he did. I mean, Logan is one of. Now I'm trying to remember. Have you seen Logan?
I haven't seen Logan.
God, man, you got to watch Logan. So,
seen it.
Logan is one of the best. God, that movie is so good. I don't even have the words for how amazing I thought that movie was.
Wolverine Origins really soured me on the standalone Wolverine movies. I haven't seen another one since. I did see Days of Future Past. I really liked it. I did watch that because I knew other people were in it. So I was just like, right. I'll go watch that. I was looking forward to Patrick Stewart being back as Professor Xavier. At the time, that's where I was at. So I was looking forward to all that. I liked Ian McKellen as Magneto. So I was really looking forward to that, and I did support that. But after Wolverine Origins, I would not watch another standalone Wolverine movie. I just refuse.
Well, see, and I feel like that's unfortunate, because the Wolverine, while not as good as Logan, I really liked the Wolverine.
I've heard people really liked it. I just wasn't going to go there. I just didn't.
There's just some really awesome scenes from the Wolverine miniseries that was cool to see brought to life, even though they mess with the story quite a bit. But I liked the Wolverine. I mean, I own it. But Logan is absolutely fantastic. Like Logan's like a whole nother level. Like it's just amazing what they did with Logan. And that's kind of why, in all honesty, I feel like that they should let that be Hugh Jackman's swan song as that character, because it's so great. I feel like you shouldn't touch that. But I can't get over it, and that's the big difference. This is the big difference. The one thing that they never did with Wolverine that I know Carl Urban would totally be down with and do would be to actually see Wolverine in the costume.
Yeah.
And I know he could totally sell that, and I know he could pay that off because he was so amazing as Dredd, and he's such a talented actor. I would love to see his interpretation of Wolverine.
Yeah, me too. I think that would be that would be awesome. That would be awesome.
Yeah. So I'm just excited at that idea. That's not even a rumor, and I just think that's the coolest thing I've heard all day. Carl Urban as Wolverine, hell yeah!
Yeah, I would like that. That would be good.
Awesome. So, all right. Well, that like I said, that was my total pop culture thing. I just wanted to talk about all this crazy, these different castings and these different people, returning or reprising or taking on a role that they were originally offered they didn't take on. There's so many different rumors swirling about what may or may not be coming on the horizon. I thought it would be worth putting it out there to just discuss. And then with all the reshuffling of the film slate and everything, man, we've got such a weight for things now.
Right.
I thought at the very least it'd be fun to at least do a little bit of speculation, since there isn't any real quote unquote hard news relating to these properties and these projects, because basically everyone's sitting on it because they don't know what to do with it yet, because of the situation we find ourselves in.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So along all those lines, there's, of course, the source material that this stuff all comes from, which is the comics. All this stuff comes from the comics. And I saw this really interesting Bleeding Cool article that has a very incendiary title. And it says Punisher creator Jerry Conway cancel every existing superhero comic. So Jerry Conway is the co-creator of The Punisher, Firestorm, Power Girl, Vixen, and the Carol Danvers version of Captain Marvel. And apparently he said something that some people were finding to be quite controversial and somewhat incendiary. But if you read the article, that's not exactly what he said. So it's interesting. The author of this article provides a little bit of context, which I think is important. And basically what he's talking about is the change in the comic book industry in terms of who is the audience. And he was relating a story where he actually went to a tour of one of the comic book studios. Can't remember if it was DC or Marvel. And it had to be DC. So he went to DC. He went to their studios because back in the day, they actually had a bullpen. They actually would had a place where you could go and see what was going on. You get tours. He went to a tour. He was 14 years old, and he talked to one of the artists or writers, editors, somebody. He talked to him, and he had an idea for a Green Lantern story. And the guy, the DC guy, responded to him. He said, "Well, how old are you?" He said, "I'm 14." And the guy said, "You're not my audience. In other words, I don't care what you think." And he provides some context to that at that time, when he was 14, the comic book industry was all centered on young readers. And so they were looking at that young demographic of 8 to 12, 8 to 13. At 14, he was already too old. Don't really care what you think. You're not my audience. And he talks about when he got into the industry, because he got into the industry himself later, and he's a boomer. He said he's a boomer. And all of a sudden, they started making comics for people like him. And of course, what's happened, and I've talked about this many, many times, is in the meantime, they've lost all the kids. The average comic book reader keeps getting older and older and older, and they keep pushing the kids away. And of course, that's the future. Eventually, all your older fans are going to die. They're going to be gone. And they're not going to be reading comics anymore because they will be dead. They will be in the ground. And you've missed 2 generations of people that could be reading comics, but aren't. So that's the context for apparently where Jerry Conway was coming from. And this is what he said. He said, "I'd cancel every existing superhero comic book and publish a limited new line for a middle grade readership. Simplify characters and storylines and eliminate every, quote, event that requires more than passing familiarity with the basic simplified continuity. 10, maybe 15 titles. For existing readers, I'd offer a separate, higher-priced graphic novel line with whatever expanded adult storylines creators and readers want to explore. But this would be separate, not monthly, not the mainstream. I'd do everything possible to get monthly comics into supermarkets, movie theaters, Walmart, Target, Costco, and offer subscription services through Amazon. Pursue every alternative distribution avenue possible. The present course taken by major publishers is a dead end. They're pursuing the wrong leadership. There's a bigger audience out there. We just have to welcome them." And I'm just going to say it. I think he's dead on. I think he's 100% correct. What do you think, Dave?
Well, I hate to be a wet blanket, but this has been sort of tried. The whole point of the New 52 relaunch, while well more than the number of titles that Jerry Conway is suggesting, the whole point of the New 52 relaunch was to create an easier entry point in order to get people hopefully into the DC universe. To take that even further, at that point, they were really trying to push also on the digital side, and they were actually trying to get those same comics into Walmart. The problem is the timelines and the way everything fell out, it didn't work that way. And the other problem that they found too, which is always the problem, they just started running after the money, because what they discovered is that with the New 52 relaunch initially, they were making a lot of money because the older readers were buying up a lot of the books. Like the older readers were still there at that point. They hadn't completely run them off just yet because some of the decisions they made ran people off. Okay. But they kind of started catering to that same audience again. That was the problem. The idea of what they were trying to do with the New 52 was a good idea. But the problem was they kept the New 52 moniker too long. It became like a weird branding thing, whereas they should have used it at the beginning, in my opinion, and then dropped it. And then the second thing is they started running after the same readership they'd always had. But the whole goal, the point of the New 52 was to try and reintroduce the DC universe to a different readership base. And they did try to make some efforts, although at times it seems like half-hearted. They did try to make some efforts to try and get the comics into the other channels, the other sort of streams, so to speak, for content. But the problem is always the same thing. You have to maintain your base while reaching out to new people, right? How do you keep because that's the problem, is that they always end up at the same place where they're more concerned about what's happening necessarily with the guy who's running the comic book retail store, and the outreach into the other channels eventually falls away, or it never materializes in the manner in which it probably should have. It's a very, very complex problem. And while I think Jerry's on to a lot of great ideas, some of these ideas have been tried with disastrous results. And I feel like I don't know exactly what the solution is. I do feel like the existing fan base needs to move on to something else at times, it feels like. And they do need to make more of an effort to bring in new readers. But I think right now the problem that's happening is the way they're trying to court new readers is also agenda driven. And I feel like that's falling flat with a lot of people because it seems disingenuous. So it's a quagmire of a mess. I don't honestly know what the solution is, but I do know that what Jerry is putting forth as an idea was what initially the concept of the New 52 was supposed to be. But like I said, the problem was they found themselves in the same place they were before because they started chasing the same audience they already had because they were the people buying the books. So eventually they were servicing that same audience instead of continuing to reach out to new people. And then before you knew it, they had created a lot of the same problems the New 52 was supposed to do away with. They had too much of an entrenched continuity. They required too much previous knowledge. And then they went, okay, well, let's do a soft reboot and try it again. They tried with Rebirth. Rebirth didn't click because basically I think people had already given up because the New 52 didn't really work for them either. So I don't know what the solution is, but I do know some of these ideas have been tried, and the results were not what one would initially expect or think.
Well, there's concept versus execution. We've talked about that before as well. Sometimes you have an interesting concept, but it all comes down to the way that you actually execute it. I think, it's funny. My perception of the New 52 as a reader was I had no interest in it. I just never had any interest in the New 52 ever. I don't think I've ever bought a New 52 book. I just never had any interest in it. To this day, I enjoy a lot of the comics I buy for my kids. What's that?
I said that hurts, man.
I'm just saying.
I worked on a lot of New 52 books.
I'm just saying that as a consumer, that's where I was. I enjoy a lot more of the stuff that comes out of the Adventures comics and the stuff that is based on the cartoon series that are based specifically geared towards children. I tend to enjoy that stuff, and it's more accessible to me than all that other stuff. And that's to this day, because to this day, I'll still try to buy a comic here and there for my daughters and see if they'll like this or not. And generally they do. They like, I've talked about this, like they like stuff like the Teen Titans Go comic, things like that. They used to look forward to getting that because I used to bring one to them almost, every month. I'd bring the new issue for them, when I picked them up from school. And I would read them too. And I would like them, you know what I mean? Because they're very easy and they're very accessible. They're very easy to just pick up and read and enjoy without knowing what the hell else is going on. I have a lot of knowledge from like Silver or even Golden Age, but a lot of that knowledge doesn't mean anything anymore because they keep changing the rules on me. And then I would finally kind of get caught up a little bit by watching the cartoon. Like I watched the Superman cartoon. And that was when I first realized what they had done with Lex Luthor and how all the changes that he'd gone through with LexCorp. And now he's a millionaire. I didn't know any of that stuff. I was still my knowledge is based on like Super Friends, my brother's old Silver Age comics, stuff like that. So I didn't know any of that stuff, but it was accessible in the animated form. And then I got really caught up and I kind of knew what was going on again. And I think that's the general point is you have to get younger readers and you have to get casual readers. And I don't think the industry has been doing that for decades. I just think that's the problem. When it comes to all these big properties for decades, they have not been good at getting the casual fan, and they have not been good at getting new young fans. They just haven't been doing it.
Well, and here's the thing: there has been an effort on DC's end to try and address these concerns, but like I said, the problem is with the New 52. Eventually, they realized the bulk of their sales was their existing core audience that had always been there, who felt like they were on the ground floor of something. So then they started selling them on this idea instead of continuing to try and keep it as an outreach to new readers. They basically, what ended up happening, which is a great idea, which is where the New 52 started, new universe, new jumping on point, right? But eventually they go, oh, well, our core audience is still the same people it's always been, so we better sell comics to them. So before you know it, you're in the same quagmire you were in before, because you're still trying to service the existing fan base instead of, being prepared to lose some of those people to expand into a new fan base or expand the existing fan base while that was the problem. And then the current stuff that they're trying to do, because there are efforts on Marvel's end and on DC's end right now trying to court and bring in new readers. But the problem is, to me, and specifically DC has a whole YA line of graphic novels and things that are primarily aimed at trying to bring in new readers. But for me, I feel like sometimes some of this stuff is too agenda driven.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And therefore it feels disingenuous. That's the problem. It's like it's with that particular group of that audience that they're trying to court, they can see through that and go, oh, well, this is just an obvious ploy for X. This is an obvious ploy for Y. I'm not doing that because I can't just be sold to in that manner. You know what I mean? So it's not working because it's tone deaf and people can see that. And at the end of the day, that's always the problem. You either go after those new readers or you service your existing fan base. There should be a middle ground in there, and it should exist. But the problem is it seems like neither one of the companies seem to understand where that middle ground is. And what you're saying, Eric, is that's exactly what the Johnny DC line used to be. The Johnny DC line, specifically with the Batman Adventures books, that's what it was. It was the middle ground. It was the bridge between something new, but something that people already understood and had a familiarity with it. You knew who Scarecrow and Penguin and whatever were, but even within those Batman Adventure books, it's a different, more updated interpretation of those characters while still holding true to the classic elements. It's like it's a slight retooling. It's not a total reinvention. And somewhere in the midst of all this is the secret sauce solution that will give us, hopefully, theoretically, what they got in the Silver Age when they reintroduced the Flash, and the Flash actually clicked with people. And there we go. We go from the Golden Age into the Silver Age, right? And that's what kept comics going. We need that moment again. But I don't know exactly what that moment is. And then it's weird. For the Bronze generation, I really feel like the seminal moment that kept comics going was Dark Knight Returns, because it was that radical approach that made everyone pay attention to comics again. And then right behind that, you have the emergence of the Teenage Ninja Turtles and all these other things, and it continues to carry it forward, right? Like, it wasn't just the one thing, but it was the moment that's the touchstone that gets people to pay attention, and they go, oh, look at all this other stuff. But so hopefully there is that seminal moment that's right there that we're waiting to see. But I'll be honest with you, I don't know what that is. I don't have a clue. I know the kind of things I personally want to do.
The interesting thing about this article is the author ends with this line. Have to say, it does appear that DC Comics is heading in this direction. Maybe Jerry Conway might like to take a peek.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. There have been many attempts specifically on DC's end to do this. To look at, even though they can't use the name, but even though they can't use the name Captain Marvel, look at the Shazam movie. That's a slight retooling of Captain Marvel, right? Using the elements they can keep while trying to introduce some other elements. So we still have, quote unquote, the Captain Marvel or the Shazam family, but it's different, hopefully put together in a manner that more people can see themselves in that, and hopefully that they will want to be a part of that. But you have to be careful, because if you approach it in the wrong way, it seems disingenuous and it feels tone deaf. And for certain people, it just doesn't work. It has to feel genuine. Cobra Kai feels genuine. So far, everything they've done with it feels genuine. It rings true. And they keep making smart moves. I never imagined that they would bring all the original Cobra Kai guys back together for one episode. And I never imagined how much I would love that and enjoy that. I never saw that coming, but yet they did it. And it felt genuine, it felt true, and it worked. And that's what we need. We need, based in the comic world, we need that Cobra Kai. We need that reinvention, and maybe not even that reinvention, that reintroduction. We need that reintroduction of that character and that slightly new way with that slightly different twist that makes us go, wow, this is amazing, but I still know who that is. I still understand what that story is. Here comes all these new supporting characters, and now I'm invested and I'm along for the ride. That's what Marvel needs. That's what DC needs. And for a while there, I would be willing to tell you that that's what the MCU was. The MCU was that kind of second lease on life, because a lot of people went back and rediscovered the comics and went back and started trying to get those things back from their childhood because they enjoyed the films, or they were willing to check out. Like, I checked out some Marvel books in the midst of all this that normally I wouldn't have read, just because I was surprised at how much I liked the Robert Downey, Jr. Iron Man. I found myself reading Thor. I read the J. Michael Straczynski Thor run just because I was having so much fun with the MCU and I wanted to be back in the world of Marvel Comics. But the only title that appealed to me was J. Michael Straczynski's Thor run. That was the only one that clicked for me. And ironically enough, Nova. The Jeff Loeb and initially Ed McGuinness Nova run, which eventually Paco Medina came in and was doing art chores, which I love Paco Medina. But when he left that book, I couldn't read it anymore. It something about the art didn't click with me anymore. But I think that's what comics need. We need that seminal moment. That's that reintroduction maybe, and then people click, and then it works again. But I don't know. I couldn't even begin to tell you what that is. I have no idea. I just know as myself, as a creator, there are certain stories I personally still want to tell, and certain kinds of things I still want to draw. But I can also tell you there are things that no one else is doing. Whether that clicks with people, who knows? So luckily enough, it seems like Red Skirts has clicked with people. Hopefully some of these other ideas that I have, maybe those will click with people too.
Yeah.
but who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. But it's an interesting idea to explore, and it's something interesting to think about. But it's just, I know on DC's end, there's been a lot of effort to try and connect with people. But it's just, you have to be careful how you do it, because a lot of what they've done so far, it hasn't quite worked. And there's been a myriad of reasons why it hasn't worked. Part of it's they lost sight of what they were trying to do, and the other one is this doesn't feel genuine. This feels contrived, and it just can't feel contrived. You handle Cobra Kai with a slightly different manner, and it feels contrived. It's a very thin line. But that's the thing that's amazing, is they've been able to walk that tightrope and still keep that foot in the classic films, but give us all this interesting twists and all these new characters, and it works, and it's amazing, and it's wonderful, and I love it, But boy, I wonder, like, you pull on a couple of those threads the wrong way, and I wonder if it feels tone deaf and it doesn't work all of a sudden.
I think the difference is that the people who do Cobra Kai, they're fans. They love the movies as they are, and they're trying to take elements of that and use them to create new stories. They're playing in the same sandbox. What you see so often right now, and you see it with Star Trek, you see it with Star Wars, you see it in DC, you see it in Marvel, especially in some of the comics, is that you seem to have these people that don't really like this stuff, and they're saying, well, I'm going to change it and make it more what I like. And I hate that. It's like, why are you doing that? If you want to do that, why don't you create your own thing? Oh, I know why. Because you have no real creativity and you're a hack. That's why. Because they could go and create their own thing with whatever their little agenda is, whatever little wrong that they think is going on, but they're not creative enough to do that. So instead, they're going to put that on some character that doesn't belong with at all. And that's what's happening. And that's what's happening in entertainment. And like I said, it's happening in Star Trek. It's happening in Star Wars. It's happening in DC. It's happening with Marvel, especially in the comic books. They're doing stuff like that, where it's like, you guys don't care about these characters. You don't like these characters. You want to change these characters to fit your narrative and your agenda. And you're not creative enough to just create your own character.
Because see it.
So
yeah. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. It's like when the choices are story driven, they feel genuine and they work. But and this brings up another thing in pop culture, but I wasn't going to bring it up. But there's the stories going around about the actor that's been hired to play Snake Eyes. I don't know if you've heard about this, because they're doing a Snake Eyes movie.
No, I didn't know they were doing a Snake Eyes movie.
All right. Well, they're supposedly developing a Snake Eyes movie. Henry Golding, who was in Crazy Rich Asians, is the guy they cast to play Snake Eyes. And it's a weird thing, because Henry Golding, he's an up-and-coming actor because he's a good-looking guy. And most of the stuff
he's not going to wear the mask, is what you're telling me. The mask is going to be torn off every other scene, and they're going to completely destroy the character.
Yeah.
Because another idiot has no idea why Snake Eyes is popular and just wants to put some agenda bullshit in there. You know what I mean? Oh, it disgusts me. I grew up on G.I. Joe. I make this point. I've made this point many times on the show. I did not grow up reading superhero comics primarily. The most superhero comics I was exposed to was my brother's Silver Age Superman and Captain Marvel, the real Captain Marvel, who we call Shazam now. He had those Silver Age comics. I would read them. Most of the comics I bought were G.I. Joe and Transformers and other licensed properties. The superhero stuff I got from the movies and cartoons. I watched Super Friends. I watched Spider-Man His Amazing Friends. I saw the Superman movies when they came out in the theater. I saw the Batman movies when they came out in the theater. I saw the Batman television series. That's where superheroes were for me, animated and film and TV. But my comics were primarily G.I. Joe and Transformers, licensed properties, where they had good writers who understood the characters. I always thought the G.I. Joe comics were way better than the cartoon, because they were written way better for a much more mature audience. You know, they had people die, people got hurt. You know what I mean? They got shot. Nobody gets shot in the cartoon. You know what I mean? Even as a kid, I was like, this is stupid. This is supposed to be war and nobody's getting hit. Doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow were hugely expanded upon in the comic books. That's, I think, one of the reasons they're so popular is because of the comic books. Because they didn't use them very well in the cartoons at all. Yeah. They didn't have anywhere near the mystique, the backstory. That all came from the comics. And that's my point. Is like, if you're going to be playing in somebody else's sandbox, be respectful to the characters, actually use the characters in a way that makes them cool, do something with them, instead of throwing your agenda crap on it. And then you just destroy the characters for what?
Right.
For what? You know?
Yeah, it's a very unusual thing, and we keep seeing it over and over again. It seems like here lately, where the company that owns X property, Y property, whatever, they don't understand the core audience for it. And in the midst of trying to create something in order to monetize it or to make more money with it or to create a franchise or to do whatever they want to do with it, they make some of the, again, like the worst choices. And then they roll it out and they go, isn't this great? And then the fan base goes, you missed the whole point. You missed the whole point. And that's where I was going with the Snake Eyes thing, is that they cast Henry Golding because he is Asian, right? And they felt like they needed Snake Eyes to be Asian. Of course, Snake Eyes was a white dude, right?
Right.
And the whole point of Snake Eyes' story was that when he was training to be a ninja was that he was the outcast, he was the outsider. And Storm Shadow didn't want him there. That's part of where their rivalry comes from, right? Like, that's the whole thing. The outsider who doesn't belong. You know, the basically sort of like the person who should inherit the mantle, the person who was born to be that thing. And then here's this outsider that's challenging his position. That's the conflict.
You know, the other thing is, you know, Snake Eyes can't talk. Yeah. And I bet you they're going to have him talking. I can just see this disaster just unfolding right in. Gosh, I wish you hadn't even told me about this story. It's just
but the reason I bring it up is because it goes to exemplify this idea that for some reason they don't understand the properties that they own, and then it goes even further. Eric, you got to let me finish because it goes even further. Henry Golding doesn't do martial arts. And so he's been out in the trades doing interviews and talking about it, and talking about how the training was so hard that he was crying because he couldn't handle it.
That's beautiful.
And the worst part is, I assume the reason that they went this way is because they went, well, nobody would believe a blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy could be such a great martial artist that he could become Snake Eyes. And I'm like, so you're saying Ray Park didn't exist? You know, because that's what Ray Park was. Like, Ray Park was.
We have been reviewing Cobra Kai. We've been reviewing Cobra Kai.
It's like, are you kidding me?
No blonde-haired white guy can be accepted as a great martial artist or accepted as a lead in a martial arts film. We're getting stupid. I mean, it's getting stupid.
That's what I'm saying. It's like when you take an agenda and you try to push it into something versus natural, like the story dictates that we do this. You know, when it is a story-driven decision, or even if it is agenda-driven, but you find a story reason that it needs to happen, it will feel genuine and it will work. But when you just go, well, we need to do X, Y, and Z, and that's just what's got to happen, it doesn't feel genuine, and it feels stupid, and it feels tone deaf, and it falls flat, and it doesn't work. And we keep seeing it over and over again. That's the thing. It's like, you and I have both lived long enough and been in genre entertainment as a consumer and as to varying degrees creators too, right? I'm thinking more for myself because most of what I've done is inking and assisting on things. So it's not like I had a direct hand on it other than the things I had created myself, but I've been around it enough kind of here and there, and you've been around it too, that you can just see it. It's like, well, this is a bad idea because this is just, you said just do this. There's no story reason to do that. You just want to do it. And it's pretty easy. It's like you go, well, that's not going to work because you don't have a story reason for that. You're just saying do it to do it. That's disingenuous. People are going to see that coming a mile away. I still don't understand why we're still circling the same bad choices when it seemed like with what all the good things they did with the MCU, it seemed like the people had been learning those lessons. But then we still see examples of like, no, they didn't learn those lessons. They just got lucky. I don't know. Anyhow, like I said, I wasn't going to bring it up, but
I think we're out of time.
All right.
We're over the 3-hour mark, so. Yeah, I wish you hadn't told me about the Snake Eyes thing because I didn't know anything.
Sorry.
I would prefer not to know anything about it after you started telling me about it. That's a character I used to really care about. So,
well, I love Snake Eyes too, but I just felt like that it kind of it epitomizes what you were just talking about. You know what I mean? This idea that, well, if you're just saying we have to do A, B, and C because we need to do A, B, and C, but you don't have a story reason for it, that's the thing. It's like Snake Eyes was and again, Larry Hama wrote those stories. When he wrote those stories, he made a deliberate choice because he wanted Snake Eyes to be the outcast, right? And it helps to further fuel the rivalry between him and Storm Shadow. It's a story reason why this exists, and when you stop looking at it from the standpoint of story-driven reason why, we're just going to do it to do it, that's when it sometimes feels disingenuous and why I think sometimes it doesn't work. So, I don't know. I just felt like it just went to reinforce your argument. So that's why I brought it up. Well, there you go. I guess, unfortunately, as you said, maybe we are out of time. So let me apologize because I probably waxed too poetic on the front end and waxed too poetic in the middle. But there's just a lot of rumor and a lot of speculation about interesting things I thought were worth talking about. And then I probably dwelled too much on the live stream event on the front end. So that's probably my bad. So I apologize to everyone.
Oh, we're good.
We're good. So, well, I hope some people still found it interesting. So, all right. Well, then, if that's good, I guess we'll just go ahead and go to the outro then.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, cool. All right. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Retro Rogues Live. Again, my name is Dave Beatty. I've been one of your hosts. You can see some of my design work, learn a little bit more about me, although not that much at kirbytees.com. But more importantly, maybe you could find an amazing shirt, specifically a Retro Rugs Live shirt that you could buy and help support what we have going on here at the Retro Rugs Live. That's at kirbytees.com. That's KIRBYTS.com. I want to thank my host, my co-host, Mr. Eric Alexander. Eric, please tell the folks hopefully watching or listening at home where they can learn more about you on the interwebs.
Well, I'm most active on Twitter. You can always get me there at BassGod14. That's at BASSGOD14. My DMs are open if you have show suggestions. Oh, I should mention that. I had wanted to mention this and I forgot. We are kind of looking at what we want to do actually for the next 2 episodes because it's kind of up in the air. So especially now, if you have any suggestions, we would kind of like to do some sort of like Halloween type stuff, like maybe some spooky stuff, because at the end of the month, we're going to have 2 very different episodes that I think are still going to be considered, we still consider retro, because we're going to be talking about Unsolved Mysteries, the second half of season 1, Unsolved Mysteries. We're each going to pick an episode. And so for the last 2 weeks in October, we're actually going to be talking about these mysteries that are coming up in the second half of the season of Unsolved Mysteries. And I believe it's very retro because I grew up watching the old Unsolved Mysteries, and I've actually been watching a lot of the old episodes recently. And so if you have any suggestions for those first 2 weeks, that includes next week, and something that you think that might be good for us to talk about, again, it being October and kind of that Halloween theme, let us know. And also, Base God 14 is the official Twitch. That's also the official YouTube. So you can always get a hold on me there. You can make a comment and just say something about something you think would be cool to review. And again, I just kind of think it would be cool to do something that's kind of on the spooky side. We don't do a lot of horror on this show or things like that, but it'd be kind of neat to maybe have that kind of departure, especially if it's something that's easily accessible, like if it's on Crackle or Tubi or something like Netflix or something like that, something that a lot of people have access to. So I just want to end on that note. Don't have a comment from the Rogues Gallery to put out there, but please give us your suggestions because we definitely would like to do something special for the month of October. So everybody have a good time out there.